You better be listening to Sleazoids or I must break you.
L.A. in 1948.
Buzz? Bad. It's always bad.
Something's coming. Ugly. Everyone wanted power.
I'll be in my hands by Thursday. I'm attending a conference, and this volume is the key to my presentation.
A conference that starts at midnight?
Everyone wanted control.
It's in the book. All right here. Promise, power, prize.
Something is watching. Something is listening. Something is coming.
How would you like to see the world the way it really is?
What's going on here?
Detective Harry Damour is walking a path.
I want you to help me. Will you take the job, Mr. Damour?
Where do I sign up?
Between what can be seen.
People are dying here. I want to know why. I've heard a name. Somebody they talk about in whispers. Who? Nix.
And what must be feared.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Sleazoids, the podcast where we go down the rabbit hole of 20th century genre fare from the most influential canon classics to the trashiest exploitation films we can get our hands on, and invite you to tag along in helping us create a canon of sleaze. Each week is a double feature grindhouse style where we discuss two films loosely related by subject, genre, actor, filmmaker, or franchise, and at the end of each episode, along with our honorary Sleazoids, which you can become by subscribing on Patreon.
The patrons have voted for the next episode, so if you'd like some of that sweet, glorious power, join the sleaze.
True democracy.
Yes.
We decide on all the official ratings rankings for every film that we cover over there. Patreon subscribers also get on our shout out and 2 bonus episodes every single month, which we have been doing for coming up on 7 years, maybe now. Like, I don't know, like time. We have like 190 or something bonus episodes, as well as our bonus transmission series, which we now have over 50 of, where we talk about new release genre movies as well. So if you're interested in that, patreon.com/Sleazoids podcast. And speaking of which, we did have a bunch of people make the jump this week. We had Marshall Hansen sign up. We had Mortis sign up. We had Alex 12, Bruno P, Jeremy Hawkins, Sam Gerwick, Anthony, Cameron Dagg, Aiden Andrew Chow, Michael, Matt Pillen, Oli Hodgkinson, Will Johnson, Christian Farger, Jonathan Bentley Smith, Kevin Springsteen, Ethan Johnson, Jack Sullivan, George Mitchens, Max Lopez, Keegan Willand, Christophides, Mason Dunn, Rodrigo, and last but not least here, Randy, who signed up and actually upgraded from the $5 a month to $10 a month and is going to be joining us for the monthly virtual screening, which we try to do on the last Thursday of every given month for the patrons who join us for that.
Mm-hmm.
So thanks so much to all of you folks. I hope you're enjoying all those bonus episodes.
Yeah, thank you guys.
That's the one plug for the week. The other plug, as always, is Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you were listening on either one of those platforms, and I can see the stats, I can see you right now listening on both those platforms, give us a good old rating and review over there. It helps us climb the ranks and find new listeners. And last plug, as always, is merch. If you like the poster art that based out of Toronto horror artist Trevor Henderson did for our show, you can get that put on basically anything that you can think of. And you freaks thought of a lot of stuff. You've bought pillows, you've bought notebooks, coffee mugs, hoodies. If you're interested in anything like that, the link is in the description of this episode, as well as over at sleazoidspodcast.com. But that is it for the intro. Welcome back another week. As always, I am your host, Josh Lewis, and joining me also, as always, is my co-host,
Jamie Miller. Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome. I believe 2 weeks ago would have been the last time you folks over here on the main feed would have heard from us, and we would have had special returning guest horror author Emma Berquist on the show to continue through the spooky season with us and discuss a double feature of 1998 Dawson's Creek meets Invasion of the Body Snatchers teen horror movies. We talked Robert Rodriguez's comedic alien creature feature called The Faculty. Everyone who had trap fever was very excited that we went back and talk about little baby Josh Hartnett, and we paired it with David Nutter's atmospheric, more almost like X-Files teen detective mystery style version of a similar premise called Disturbing Behavior.
Yes, yes. And also with The Faculty, you do get a adorable appearance and I guess lead performance from Elijah Wood, I think, pre The Lord of the Rings. So it's
true.
Just the cuteness overload on that thing.
Yeah. Whereas Disturbing Behavior, you see a bunch of teens just get murked by William Sadler. So they kind of offer different things depending on what you're into. But we had a good time breaking those down with Emma 2 weeks ago. And then last week over on the Patreon feed, we rang in the finale of the spooky season with a gothic, supernatural, B-horror melodrama double feature where we talked about the collaborations of Jacques Turner and Val Lewton, with a double feature of their tragic, lonely, and psychosexual creature feature Cat People from 1942, a classic that needs no introduction. And we paired it with their lesser-known collaboration, though recently released in 4K by Criterion, so maybe soon to be as well-known, I Walked with a Zombie from 1943, which was essentially perhaps... I'm going to describe the most offensive premise of all time: Haitian voodoo plantation slavery Jane Eyre.
And then promise you it's way better than it sounds.
Yes, and it's quite beautiful and quite melancholy, and everything you like about Cat People is included, and it somehow gets just incredibly ghostly, and it wrestles with all of that history in a genuinely interesting way, and not in the hateful way you would expect of 1943. So we were quite impressed by that and talked about it a lot over on the Patreon feed last week for anyone who's interested.
Yeah, amazing direction too. Just his use of shadows in general in both of those movies, and setting up like things that you're going to see for the next just like 100 years almost, which is the setup of a jump scare and things of that nature. So pretty incredible. Yeah.
But moving on to this week, we are leaving the ghouls and ghosts behind. Well, I guess only just a little bit. But we are moving into the Noirvember season, where we are going to spend a month, as we always do, talking about nothing but noir and neo-noir and crime movies. And to kick off that season, we are joined by two first-time guests. They are the cinema manager and program director, as well as the owner and operator of a brand new independent movie theater located in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, Canada, called the Tivoli Cinema, that is having its grand opening in just a few weeks here, and their names are Walker McDonald and Phillip Homburg. Walker and Phil, welcome to the show. How you guys doing?
Yo,
thanks guys. I'm doing well.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us, guys. Before we dig into your Noirvember selections, which I'm very excited to talk about, as someone who programmed an indie theater in London, Ontario here called the Highland Cinema for a number of years. And
you're at the Highland? Okay, cool.
That's right. Yeah, it's spent probably 3 years or so, and now I am an avid weekly attender and supporter of the Review here in Toronto. I'm always very excited to learn about more options for people to enjoy these non-Cineplex indie theater experiences that I have cherished for so many years, and especially I have to imagine out east in Canada, it's not quite as common or as easy to do as it is in a massive city like Toronto. So maybe if you could take a moment. Whoever wants to take the reins, tell our listeners about this new Tivoli Cinema venture, where the idea came from, how far along you guys are, and what type of programming people can expect.
Well, I think the review is is definitely a common point of reference for both of us. That was one of the first conversations, I think.
Yeah. In many conversations, I've had with distributors, if they have like a question about like our space and how we plan to program things, I just tell them like, we're going to rip off the Review specifically as much as possible. Like where this came from for me personally as a programmer is I did the repertory programming at another like smaller independent theater in town for about a year. And I was on like the board there for 2 years. It's an NPO, a smaller operation. And, it's fun to be in that position, as you would know, because I mean, it's neat to like, because it feels like fantasy football to a degree, because you just pull out this schedule and be like, okay, this goes with this has an anniversary. It's fun. It feels good to do. But I had some restraints based on like people I was working with and, just certain financial limitations. But I still made it work the best I could. But Phil was a fan of that programming. We'd had some mutual friends for a long time. We lived in the same town for a very long time, but had never met in person until we started talking about
we were Twitter mutuals probably for years before we met in person, Walker?
Yeah, it was strange. But I mean, that Charlottetown's a place where something like that can happen. Like someone could be your neighbor forever. You don't quite know, which is insane because everyone is spitting distance from each other. But the history, like, well, where I don't want to jump around too much. Phil, how long back? Because like the cinema in the Arts Hotel had been a plan for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess what started as it's in a hotel and there's a music venue on the the main floor in a restaurant. And I don't know, we just had this crazy idea that maybe a movie theater would work. I'm been a movie lover my entire life. I mean, some of my earliest memories are watching movies. So it was something that I thought would be cool. And then checking out Walker's programming and knowing about the Review and other repertory theaters, I thought it would be a good fit in Charlottetown. There's not a heck of a lot to do here that doesn't involve sitting behind a bar on a cold winter night. So just, getting people out and doing something fun, and I love Walker's programming, and his relationship to movies is, I think, fairly similar to mine, so yeah,
awesome. And I'm assuming you guys are in the final stages, because you guys, Walker was sending some photos and stuff too. You guys were you were putting this thing together by hand.
I was down there today yelling at some old contractor men and trying to keep everybody in order, since Walker's been
I guess that's not quite by hand, but I understand.
I've never swung a hammer in my entire life. So.
You boys didn't come from the dirt like I did.
But yeah, no, it's coming along. I mean, we were talking today about what is the realistic opening time, and we will be open in December for sure. So equipment's on the way, and we got seats, we've got drywall's coming up, and it's really coming along.
Amazing. Well, if you are a movie lover in Charlottetown, you are about to have a new favorite place to go. I'm assuming you guys will have a membership, so I would highly recommend going out and supporting these guys, especially if they are, as they say, and they are just going to be we're just going to steal everything that the Review does, because the Review is a beloved institution in Toronto. Yeah, it's great. Everyone rallied around it this year to make sure that it was here for as long as possible, and it's never been busier. It's never had more interesting programming. And when Rocker reached out, he even mentioned, he was like, one of the episode pairings you guys did on the show, it might even inspire one of the double features we do. So if you're a fan of this show and you're near Charlottetown and they're doing a double feature inspired by the show, you literally have to go.
Frankly, if you're east of Montreal, listen, there's other smaller independent theaters that we like. City Cinema, great. That's where I worked for a long time. Propeller Arcade in Halifax, banger. Ian's the best. But as far as an actual repertory house experience, like the Review, like the Rio, or Music Box, New Bev, all that stuff, there is zilch east of Montreal with any kind of attention to that sort of atmosphere. And I just know that if there's a dedicated experience like that you can expose people to, they'll be like, where the fuck was this my entire life?
Can I quote Walker to himself? It's my favorite line is he wants it to feel like a movie theater from a movie theater. And I think that really spoke to me. And I think,
you should feel like you're walking into the theater from Matinee and John Goodman's trying to hack his wares to you.
Okay. That's a little bit better. I was going to say the Blob remake, where it's pulling people out of their seats.
That's how I want. That's what I wanted.
Yeah, exactly. That's the slime's going to come after you. There's no blob. There's just slime.
Yeah. Awesome.
I love it.
Well, I'm very excited that there is some people out there who are opening up a new venture like this, and I'm assuming a lot of people east of Montreal are going to be very happy that this exists. But quickly here, moving on to your guys' selections for movies this week, because we were we wanted to get you guys in quick. We wanted to talk about the theater. We wanted to get people to know about the theater before it opened, so that people would hopefully flock to it the second that you guys let them. And we were that means you guys are locked into Noirvember. You have to choose crime movies. And so Walker and I, since we kind of figured this out by email together, what two movies are we talking about this week, and why have you paired them together?
We are talking about Cast a Deadly Spell, Martin Campbell, Fred Ward, 1992 or 3, I want to say.
91.
91. Ooh, I was so close.
This is why you can't skip the intros. You were saying this off air. This is why you can't. This is when you're going to find out this information.
This is where I check the podcast description and go to where you timestamped
it. True.
So yeah, we're doing Cast a Deadly Spell.
Tips and tricks for any listeners out there.
Yeah, I'm coming right from the source. And also to listeners out there, if you just email Josh and lie about having a theater, he'll let you on the show. It's amazing.
It's true. I'm very gullible.
Cast a
we
Deadly
require
Spell
no proof at all.
And Clive Barker's Lord of Illusions with everyone's favorite Quantum Leap, Scott Bakula.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of mentioned these options separately, and I hadn't seen either. And when I looked them up and I saw a possible like 40s noir meets 90s horror double feature of Private Eyes investigating paranormal magic, I was like, there's literally not a more perfect double feature someone could have came up with to bridge our gap between our Spooktober season and our Noirvember season. And I was like, this is just perfect. We have to talk about these.
Walker did not inform me about these in advance, but he didn't realize that. I think this is like one of my favorite genres, the detective, the Lovecraftian detective story, because the closer you get to the truth, the more insane you become, which is the ultimate kind of detective for me.
Yeah, I'm actually I'm curious if we could just name off a couple others, because I really like the genre too, but I'm just drawing a blank on if I've seen a lot of these. The Lovecraftian
one of the earlier ones would be something like Angel Heart, probably.
Sure.
Yeah, Angel Heart was what I was thinking. Or Ninth Gate, the Polanski movie with Johnny Depp.
Do you know what that might have even been the pairing we did on the show? I don't remember. We've covered both of those though.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then horror procedural in general, if you kind of expand it, it is, I gotta say, it's just one of my favorite genres. Yeah. It's I mean, you love noir movies, you love detective movies, you love people pulling at that thread, being cool as hell. The style is obviously incredible, but then you merge it with some gory horror, and I'm like, okay, well, too much of a good thing.
Yeah, and all this like just fantastic monster kind of, especially the grotesque, abstract kind of designs that you get from Lovecraftian stuff. So mixing all of that is really great.
Yeah, and I'm also excited that it's going to be two very opposing director sensibilities here. You have Martin Cambell, who is just a consummate professional. He is one of the great Bond journeymen, and you have Clive Barker, who never got any sort of formal training on how to make a movie in his entire life, and was like, how do I make the most disgusting, uniquely me things, and how do I have the most personality so that you would not be mistaken watching anybody else's movie?
Yeah, and I will say, even though both of these have elements of silliness, Cast a Deadly Spell tries it like to be a comedy at certain points, whereas Lord of Illusion may dabble here and there just because of how over the top it gets, but he does find a pretty consistent tone for the most part when it comes to like the dreadful
There's a difference between a silly genre premise and gags.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Lord of Illusions is a very silly premise, but it is taken very tonally seriously.
Yeah. Cast a Deadly Spell has demon fights and just wildness.
Cast a Deadly Spell is like
the skeletal suit monster that was apparently conjured via like that wizard enforcers, like apparently those are runes. It just looks like someone drunk trying to write down their address for an Uber or something. But it's just I forgot so much. Like, which one are we doing first? Are we doing Cast a Deadly Spell first? Is that what we're thinking?
Yeah. I think I'll wrap up the intro there and jump us right into it so that we can take off and start talking like crazy here. But yeah, I think we're going to go chronologically with this pairing, and we're going to start things off here. We're going to talk about Cast a Deadly Spell,
or what's left of it.
Phil, nothing in life's as funny as you think.
Fred Ward.
My collar may be a little frayed. Maybe I need a shoe shine. But nobody's got a mortgage on my soul. I own it, free and clear.
Cast a Deadly Spell.
The critics are mesmerized about Cast a Deadly Spell. Imagine Who Framed Roger Rabbit with witches and zombies instead of tunes, and you've got a great way to spend an evening.
All right, we are talking Cast a Deadly Spell, the 1991 absurdist dark fantasy horror neo-noir television movie directed by Martin Cambell, written by Joseph Doherty, and starring Fred Ward as Detective Harry Phillip Lovecraft, a 1940s hard-boiled noir protagonist who navigates and tugs at the threads of the same type of criminal web conspiracies of film noir, but in an alternate Los Angeles where H.P. Lovecraft's Cthulhu mythos and Necronomicon and monstrous creatures are all real. So in other words, this is the coolest movie ever made, essentially, in terms of someone coming up with an idea for a movie. And believe it or not, this is actually our first time ever talking about New Zealand-born British filmmaker Martin Cambell, who at this point in his career was most well known for doing crime, action, political thriller TV series for the BBC, like The Professionals and Edge of Darkness, which he would later remake, but who would obviously later become famous for his work on 2 different eras of James Bond, doing Pierce Brosnan's GoldenEye as well as Daniel Craig's Casino Royale, before throwing it all away on Ryan Reynolds and Green Lantern, and mostly now hanging out in the direct-to-video action zone. But honestly, even today... Yeah, that's where I mean, not quite direct-to-video. Some of them are going to theaters, but they are direct-to-video premise movies, and they're lean and competent for what they are. Like, I liked that late period Jackie Chan movie he did with Brosnan again called The Foreigner, just a few years back. That had like Cliff Martinez score for it or something. Okay. I was like, but yeah, he's around and mostly just tuning up very light action movie premises.
Yeah.
The competent journeyman, which we don't have enough of these days, I'd say.
Yeah, it doesn't. No. You don't see it as much anymore. It's I mean, I really what he did after this, I guess, is I think what he is most known for, at least in this decade, which is Mask of Zorro and GoldenEye, because those were in the 90s, I believe, right? Yeah, 95 and 98.
The 98, so,
yeah.
Super interesting stepping stone to that too, because I mean, like when you were talking earlier about when the words Lovecraftian noir were mentioned, and you guys started talking about what are some other ones, I thought you were joking. I literally can't think of another one besides this. It's like explicitly like they're pulling like names of the old ones out and using that and like the text and Necronomicon and all that stuff. But to me, it's just like every once in a while there is there's an old like screenwriting adage that like if you just take 2 very popular things and mash them together, even in like a very incongruous way, that can like generate a new like story, like new to you and new to people's story. And I think this is probably one of the most successful versions of that, but still super like cutting and incongruous. Like when I was watching this, it felt like it perfectly slotted in to both the David Ayer movie Bright, like that same world, but also like those Harry Potter, like Fantastic Beast movies. And I feel like this represents like an origin point in a timeline, and it splits. That could go to Fantastic Beasts or go to Bright. Neither are a positive direction, but this is.
I will say I posted a clip from Cast the Deadly Spell, and we'll talk about the specific scene because it's the one where Fred Ward kicks a gargoyle in the nuts, which is
gargoyles got nerds.
Yep. That I posted that clip on Twitter, and nearly this is anecdotal, but I would say about a good 25 to 50% of the responses were people going, "Whoa, someone did Bright like before Bright." This makes Max Landis's tweet even funnier about how it's like his new Star Wars.
This could have been Martin Campbell's Star Wars if he had handled the property properly.
That's right. Exactly.
There is a sequel. There's a sequel with Dennis Hopper.
Oh yeah,
we are definitely going to get into that because I actually watched that one first.
Oh, holy hell!
Awesome.
But Paul Schrader-Ochurism will take you to some crazy places.
Yeah, no, you want to talk about journeyman? That's him at his journeyman lowest.
Lovecraft was hot in the 90s. I mean, you had Carpenter doing those Lovecraft movies, and you had this and Lord of Illusion. So I don't know. There was something in the air, like beneath the 90s.
Yeah, that makes sense as you say that.
And beauty, there's hell, right? There's we just accept that we live in hell now, but back then it was like no. The further we look into this, the more evil everything is, right?
Yeah, well, and it was just a pretty popular horror trend through the 80s and 90s, I think, too, because I recently got to watch stuff. Yeah, well, and I was going to say, so you have Stuart Gordon, obviously, and Fulci. I just got to see, speaking of the review, I just watched City of the Living Dead on a print there this past week, and I totally forgot that there's like talk about essentially like a Necronomicon and like the Book of Abon and stuff like that, and I just did not remember that being a part of it, but like that was his Gates of Hell trilogy is all very Lovecraftian, and speaking to your point too about just sometimes you just throwing 2 things together and that being enough to carry it. it was so stupid that was my entire enjoyment of this movie, that I went, oh, this is like a noir scene I've seen like literally 10,000 times, and then every single time there was like, oh, but what if there was a gremlin in it? I was like, yeah, that's so stupid that works. But every single time I was like, okay, this is a whole new scene. No one's done this scene before.
It is funny, like there was one specific scene where it's just purely an interrogation, and then you're just watching like kind of zombie like people fall over in the background, and you know, that's it's kind of just sprucing up something that, like you said, you've seen 1,000 times. And they kind of pull that trick throughout the movie, I would say, but because they come up with different gags every single time, it does feel at least fresh in that regard.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I ended up feeling less like Lovecraft horror, and I kind of felt more like Roger Rabbit ended up being kind of the direction.
It's Lovecraft in name only. Like a lot of that stuff is referenced. You can tell that whoever was, you know, coming up with this spec to try and be like, I need something to hit, definitely like looked into what was going on in the zeitgeist. So like, this guy's got all kinds of Googahs and boogans. I want to put them in my conventional noir script. And to be honest, any movie, if you sprinkle in Googahs, boogans, goblins, ghouls, I'm such a happy camper. That's all anything needs to be interesting. If you just give like some effects company $1 billion.
Totally.
Yeah, this screenwriter got just super lucky, because I guess he wrote it in the early 80s, Joseph Doherty, and the only other major credit prior to this I could even find was the rape revenge cyborg movie called Steel and Lace. So I have no idea where this one came from.
He did Bitchenstein. Yeah. That's a good one too.
Yeah, and so this one was bought by HBO, and I guess it was bought around the same time that they were doing Tales from the Crypt. So I guess that they were like, it's a big show and this kind of genre bending thing, and it's a comedy, and so they saw this script, I guess, as a piece of original TV programming. And you know, I don't know that it's as sturdy and exciting and character driven as some of the maybe best things Martin Campbell has ever seen come across his desk, but there is 100% some energy to this like very bizarre cartoonish like noir pastiche of a Raymond Chandler, you know, Private Dick Noir getting involved in all these goofball version of like Lovecraftian weird fiction situations. And people at the time even were basically just like, it's, you know, it's got, I think one of the reviews was like, if you liked Who Framed Roger Rabbit, tune in at 8 p.m. on Sunday night or something like that. It was like, come, you know, it's witches and zombies instead of cartoon characters. Enjoy. And if that's the pitch, they fucking nailed it. It's exactly what you...
Can we talk about the quote zombies also? Because there's a very profound detail about the zombies once they get into like where you go and buy them, or like you see a bunch of them in mass outside of like the one actor that's like Clancy Brown's like Walking Stiff.
Yes, go for it.
I mean, subtlety is nowhere in this movie's cinematic vocabulary, but when you see the zombies and they if you pulled out like the little Family Guy like color race chart thing, they are very on the low end of it. And I was like, oh wow, okay, so you're just going there with like zombies are slaves, like this. Yes, precisely. Yeah, man, the 90s.
See, Max Landis didn't even get there first. Like, come on, man.
Us orcs, man, we got it hard out here.
Not to mention, this movie also has a couple things that end up being kind of questionable by the end. The whole thing with the daughter is wild. Like, and I understand the initial premise of like, you know, the virgin sacrifice and all that when it comes to these kind of occult rituals and all of that. But when you make, you know, we'll get to the finale, but
this movie likes to have a real sense of humor about that.
Yeah, and
Grimaldi, you beautiful bastard, you fucking 16-year-old, you saved the day.
The Deus Ex Machina is statutory rape.
I could not believe that was kind of like the answer in a sense. But yeah, we'll get to all that. But the movie itself does have a lot of these strange kind of I don't know, transgressive ideas in some way, I guess.
It's totally insane. Yeah,
it's wild.
Yeah, but I will say, like, I was surprised at first throwing it on that it was actually, I mean, I guess it was Martin Campbell, and I shouldn't have been surprised. You know, this guy, you know, he knows how to craft a movie, and I didn't expect it to, when I was like HBO TV movie Lovecraft Noir, I was not expecting the like charmingly artificial like production value to actually be
it's
kind of handsome. Like I liked the production design. I liked the costuming. There's a lot of very exaggerated and colorful lighting choices. And when we get into it as well, there's some quite, frequently surprisingly gruesome, like 80s creature feature puppet effects and everything for all the various gremlins and werewolves and zombies and all that kind of stuff that we will talk about. But maybe a good place to start here would be the fact that I think a huge reason this works, if this works at all, is a hugely overqualified cast.
Oh, yeah. That just
Fred Ward.
Have a ton of fun, chew the shit out of scenery. It's a blast.
It's amazing, like especially there's those top four. Like you have Fred Ward is obviously playing Detective H.P. Lovecraft, and he's following up playing the smirking monster hunting cowboy of Tremors, and he's great here at doing the noir tough guy thing of being very weary and smug and sweaty and kind of cool as hell, rocking his fedora and his cigarette and pulling up to the scene of a murder via voodoo doll and just grimacing at how magic has made crime like easier, it's made my job like harder, and he does not indulge in it because he is an old soul and he does not believe in any of that. They call him same old Schlubcraft, same old, what a stubborn guy.
Him and Caesar Catalina would not get along at all.
Not at all. He's not thinking about the future, despite the fact that he shares a birthday December 5th with Walt Disney and Martin Van Buren. He likes to mention this.
That was, man, I got in the dialogue. Not only do you have this, like you said, super overqualified cast that just to get to rip shit, like Julianne Moore, Fred Ward, Clancy Brown, just like a cavalcade of character actors. It's wonderful. But
David Warner, the god.
David Warner's so good. Yeah, I just love whenever he shows up on screen, and that's
Yeah. But the dialogue is it's so heavily stylized, almost to the point of parody or satire of the era it's approximating. There were so many quippy lines, and it said so fast and delivered with the right kind of leaning into it vigor that I would compare it to something like Brick a few years later, where everyone speaks in some kind of turn of phrase or metaphor that just is shit out of the screenwriter's brain. What is it when Fred Ward is going back and dealing with his old police captain, and he's trying to get information out of him. He's like, come on, don't turn this into a trip to the dentist. I was like, I would genuinely just lift that and use it for something else. It's really, really good.
Yeah. They also even the introduction with the credits and everything, they kind of do this classic jazzy vibe of a classic noir going into the LA 1940s, but then immediately you're on a rooftop with a storm brewing, and I can't remember the character's name. I think it's the Jamaican woman that works with Harry.
His witch landlord or whatever.
Yeah. But, But then
Kropotkin.
They kind of
Hippolyte Kropotkin. What a name.
Yeah. They mix so they kind of mix the two tones that you're going to see right away, which is the classic noir, and then mix in with the kind of the witchcraft and the doom feeling that's going to come, because everyone's saying
and even on the title card, LA 1948, everyone used magic.
Right.
It's as much of here's an alternate supernatural version of an LA noir. And you get these incredible sort of stylized dialogue and imagery, despite the fact that they're working on an HBO budget and a 90s HBO budget, not the HBO budgets you're currently used to seeing right now. I get Fred Ward. One of the earliest things he says in voiceover when he starts his narration, and I don't even remember if it maintains the narration throughout. I think it just really was all noir needs to start with
at least start with it.
I think rounds it out with it.
Yeah.
I was I'm the only guy who knows it all and lived to tell the tale. And it started with a woman. It always starts with a woman. And I was like, okay, you know exactly what you're in for. And that woman is a very young Julianne Moore, long before she was doing Robert Altman or Todd Haynes or Paul Thomas Anderson movies of the later 90s. And she would really make a name for herself as basically one of the best actresses of that decade. In this, she's playing a lounge singer named Connie Stone, who is his sort of ex-fling who works at the Dunwich nightclub owned by his former cop partner turned kind of sadistic magic wielding mobster Harry Borden, played by Clancy Brown, who I will say sick combo of Vincent Price mustache, like white dinner tux, martini glass. We've previously only ever talked about him on our episode, I believe, of Extreme Prejudice, where he played one of the CIA death squad members doing Iran-Contra, like wild punch cowboy shit. So I was like, this is a very different performance.
Yeah, he kind of plays him like he's having a lot of fun with how mean and how just nasty he gets to be. Like he's the type of mob boss that's just killing everybody left and right if they betray him even a little bit, or if he thinks they're going to betray him, he'll just outright kill them. But he's always kind of doing it with a smirk and a smile. So he's like
commanding his zombie orc henchman to like go on the hunt for the Necronomicon, and he has another henchman who, we get to see our first uses of what kind of magic in this universe looks like. And for some people it's just like lighting a fire in your palm to light your cigarette, or like pouring a drink in midair or something. And one of the first examples we see of what Clancy Brown's side of the equation uses is that guy who gets tries to sell him a fake Necronomicon, which he also sold him with fake money. And he gets so upset, he chases him down into a bathroom, and he gets all of the fake paper bills out of the envelope and lifts them up with magic and spins them around the guy into like a tornado until it paper cuts him to death with like actual like deep
cuts, man. It's so
sick.
And
it's like deep bloody gashes, and I was like, damn.
Yeah, it's pretty wild how right away it gets incredibly bloody and pretty aggressive.
That really establishes the tone, right? Like you're not quite sure what to expect until that moment. You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. I will say I was kind of hoping for a couple more things that maybe I'm just misremembering. I'll have to look through my notes, but that one felt like one of the bigger magic moments when it came to how they're dishing out the violence in that regard, and the other thing, because when they eventually take out the little guard compared to the big zombie guard that's with him, they just kind of drown him with the zombie guard, which I kind of like. The image of it is really
fast.
Yeah, the image of it is still kind of darkly humorous, just because you have the big zombie guard like holding him upside down in the giant gold bathtub. But it's just when I saw that paper cut death, I was like, holy shit, are we gonna get some? It's almost like Wishmaster stuff or something like that. Just very over
That's
the
a good
top
pull,
and
actually,
dreamlike. Yeah, and the one, just speaking of pulls, the one big zombie guy reminded me just of how they act with the guards on Dead Heat. Josh, I don't know if you guys have seen Dead Heat.
Oh, bro, Treat Williams and Joe Piscopo. I love that movie so much. Written by Shane Black's younger brother.
Oh, it
That's
is.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
right. Yeah. It's that movie's awesome. We are big fans of that on the show. But it was kind of reminded me of that, just using the zombies as these like just blunt objects of strength, basically.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of merging the crime movie with like the supernatural horror, right? It's just less Lovecraftian. That has more of like a Big Trouble Little China, like kind of quality.
Like dips its toe in Reanimator. It's spectacular.
Yes, exactly. But I did appreciate that this does have like a goofy sense of world building to it. Like it is things like, Lovecraft being late on his rent for his office, and he shares it, with a licensed voodoo witch who shares it with him, and, nearly driving his old like beat up film noir mobile into like a unicorn that's being chased on horseback with bow and arrow around the mansion property, which is how we're introduced to the David Warner character who's playing this LA businessman, Amos Hackshaw. And Warner previously talked about on The Omen, Tron, Waxwork, actually talked about him a lot, but maybe our favorite and closest comparison point was that time traveling Jack the Ripper movie he did Time After Time. I was thinking about that.
Hold on. That's crazy.
No, it's real. Look it up. Time After Time. Look it up. I was thinking about that.
Who plays the detective in that, or who plays Holmes in that? Isn't it like
1979? Oh, we're playing this. That's great.
It's good. It's fun. Anyway.
Yeah, we did that one with another Sherlock Holmes one too. I think it was like Murder by Decree. Dude, it was Malcolm McDowell.
Right. Malcolm McDowell. Yeah, that's wild.
What a combo of guys. I was thinking about that a little bit, and then I was also thinking of In the Mouth of Madness, obviously, because you get the Lovecraftian horror there. Either way, he's one of those British thespian accents that was like born to play an aristocratic noir villain, and he gets to really indulge in that here alongside the quite baffling character of his 16-year-old daughter Olivia, played by Alexandra Powers, who we will learn he is trying to prevent from not being a virgin and growing up and losing, having sex for the first time in order to she calls herself Rapunzel, but in order to like literally sacrifice her in order to do one of these rituals, which we'll talk about. But yeah, this is, the kind of stuff where their characters are introduced. And we'll talk about this with Lord of Illusions as well, where, you can kind of see the wheels turning on exactly what kind of movie this would have been if it didn't have Lovecraftian elements in it, where it's like, oh, the wealthy guy had something stolen from him and he hires a PI to go and get it. And he finds out that the conspiracy leads all the way back to the guy who hired him. It's like, oh, but I was like, David Warner ominously telling you that the Necronomicon, he needs it by midnight tomorrow. I was like, dude, he can't want that for good things. Like, I don't know.
It's very convenient. No, but I mean, I feel like I'm going to keep saying this, but just like as a writer myself, there is something that is just so delightfully simple about like something that would otherwise be hackneyed, played out.
It's a trope, kind of right?
Like the structure
but
of
it's good. It works.
Yeah, and there's a reason there's so many of them, because it's satisfying, it works. But just taking something that would otherwise be arguably boring and just sprinkling it with this new veneer, it's a whole other thing. And it's
add puppets and zombies and magic, Walker. That's all you got to do. Yeah,
I know. It just makes me feel warm in my.
There's 4 stories,
and I think a lot of these stories too, when you get down to the plotting being very similar in a lot of them, it goes down to watching a man kind of go into spaces that he normally wouldn't have to interact with, and watching him interact with them. And I find that even when you're going through something that is this plotted or this repetitive and this, I guess, derivative, you can just count on whatever interesting character he's interacting with. That will be the entertainment. And that's where you're going to kind of get the world building and all of that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, just watching Fred Ward, who is, could have just been able to straight up play a noir detective in a, completely straight. And I think he admirably tries to keep the performance straight, even when he's surrounded by completely absurd things. But it is, there's an absurd pleasure to just watching, him being a classic noir tough guy, and then all of a sudden having to deal with the fact that that character lives in a world where it rains blood.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of
when
a
that started happening,
strange image.
Yeah. When you're talking about the world building and the casual elements of it, beyond just like background gags of like someone stirring their tea and not using their fingers, or lighting a smoke with no match. When that started happening, I was like, oh, we're going to get a set piece. Something bad is going down. And they're just looking at like, weather didn't call for this, and it's just totally normal that it rains blood.
That just sucked. A dude who owns a rooming house. He's working on his car outside. There's just an engine gremlin in it that he's gotta get the double barrel out. The fucking pests are back.
And I loved those, obviously, like, because you can't make a movie post Gremlins with gremlins in it and not have some kind of point of reference. I actually would have liked to see those in like the Joe Dante stuff. Like that, I love the design of them. They're fantastic. All the creature stuff is so great in this. I forgot about the gargoyle being kind of like this servant of David Warner until it came back to bust through the window and like punch that lady Mortal Kombat style through the chair. Like, it's just
oh god.
What's wild too, and I do like the setup of this, is when he goes to the to the mansion when he's getting hired, he sees all of the kind of the Gothic statues, including the gargoyle, and I think there's even a cool shot where it starts to rain blood on the gargoyle when it's still in a statue.
Yeah, and it's where you get the first gargoyle point of view vision too, where it's like that like blue tinted like wide angle lens that we'll soon to see him like kind of voyeuristically following him around, keeping an eye on how his investigation is going.
Yeah, it's really great, and I do like the way that when he does become animated, I think there's a mix between like it possibly being a puppet or animatronic, and then at one point they actually have a guy in a suit looking like the gargoyle, but the head is just so detailed and kind of just separated from what I assume.
It's definitely a guy when he puts his hands on his hips, right? He's like,
hey,
come on,
he's giving attitude and stuff. Yeah. Yeah, it's a really good gag, but it is. I do like the design, and it does add to some of the comedy aspect to actually be a man in a suit, and kind of you get all the physicality of that.
Yeah, it's a real.
Yeah. And it sounds like stupid and simple, but that is legitimately just the pleasure of this movie. And
yeah,
you have to be like that. That is all the movie really is doing. It is various scenes that you have seen in a noir where like Fred Ward goes to like a nightclub and Julianne Moore is like performing a heartbreaking like nightclub routine where she's weaving in lyrics all about the magic you used to weave over me, the spell you broke that you once held over me, and there's meant to be these two are going to find their way back to each other, but maybe she's going to go femme fatale mode, maybe she's going to be involved in the conspiracy.
Yeah.
And he's getting reacquainted with her. He's also getting reacquainted with Harry, the mobster, who it turns out, in typical noir fashion, is his former partner who has just gone rogue and gone bad, and he used to have respect for, but now it is, I will say, Fred Ward and Clancy Brown just going head to head with each other in a scene, like taking turns just chewing dialogue.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Oh, dude,
I would have watched those guys do. They should have given these guys a show.
Nickel and dime.
Because I do like the one where Fred Ward is like, you read any good books lately, Harry? Or he's like, I know that you've been after this Necronomicon that my boss is also looking for. And you just get Clancy Brown just fucking chewing on a cigar, just being like, why are you so anti-magic, bro? That's ultimately the two things they talk about.
Someone refers to Clancy Brown's cigar as like a burning chair leg or something.
Smoldering chair leg. Yeah.
See, that is just it just sizzles. It just cracks at you. It's that, and like fuck, I think like after they've got Lovecraft, like Fred Ward, in the back of the truck and they're heading to their big Cthulhu sacrifice thing, he still doesn't let up the whole snide like, I've got this whole thing sewn up. And he says a line to him that's like, your last words are going to be a scream. It's I can't get over this. I'm just going to end up quoting the entire thing. It's a blast.
No, there's a lot of good ones. Fred Ward too, being like, I'm looking for a cut rate punk with a hot book and the first rock I look under, and I find you telling me the way of the world.
Yeah. It's one.
The one that the kind of mob, I guess you could technically call it violence in a sense. It is definitely taking something physical from somebody. But when he uses magic to take the singer's voice away, that fucked me up personally. Just as a vocalist, that was like, oh man, that guy's really screwed. That and they even have that kind of set up where it opens up the club scene with him singing, and he's got like a big close up, and then they go as I think it's Harry walking into Borden's office. He's killing his voice or whatever. So there's some interesting usages of like the magic and all that I liked. There's also, we were just talking about how the discussion of him not using magic pops up a lot. That part of it is so repetitive to his character that there's even a line where he goes like, seems to me we've already had this discussion. And I'm like, yeah,
every single character is like, dude, you're the guy who's famous for like not using magic, even though magic is like super awesome. Yeah. Like, everybody uses magic.
That's me. You got it. And man, I will say to that effect, for like as delightfully generic as a lot of these beats are, if I can give it anything, there is something to the quality of like his arc as a Luddite that somehow has to deal with the world of magic around him. I don't know like what I could like cleanly place on to magic as a metaphor in this, and kind of the larger scale of what it's doing in a period.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I don't know what it is a metaphor for, but yeah.
Considering everything else, it's probably a metaphor for nothing. He probably just read like a book and is like, he's got to have a problem, so he just like, all right, here's his problem. But
it seems like it's as simple as just that idea that there's some type of old way, and he refuses to let go of it. It's as simple as that, I guess. Because you're right,
he's
that
just
there
a
doesn't
cranky
seem to be
old fucker.
It doesn't seem like there is any
it is largely used as using it is to him a form of compromise. It's an easy way out. It is a to him it's a moral compromise.
It's like not
he has integrity
a lot of things.
Yeah. I'm gonna write a thing.
Unlike Clancy Brown, who's like he's
a real good guy.
Every time I see Clancy Brown on the screen, I'm like, this guy is a bastion of moral. My moral framework comes directly from this character. When I see him on Billions, I was like, let's go. This is my guy.
Speaking of him,
that mustache,
and kind of like, I think Clancy Brown is probably the only member of like the SpongeBob voice cast that I can divorce from that role. Anytime I see anyone else in anything, whether it's Tom Kenny or the fucking Patrick guy, immediately I'm like, it's no one else. I can close my eyes and just see the character reading that. But Clancy Brown just had such a varied career as a character actor, apart from all those other ones, that he's like so versatile in so many ways. But no matter what he is, it's Clancy Brown.
Yeah, I actually forgot. Like, I often forget that he's Mr. Krabs, right?
Yeah,
is that who he plays? Yeah, I often forget that completely. So I totally agree.
That's how you know you had a great career.
Yeah, because it's pretty iconic.
Well, yeah, and he is like a huge motivating factor for Fred Ward, because obviously he, as I keep not calling him this, as Phil Lovecraft sees the world, Clancy Brown and Julianne Moore have compromised themselves to the world of magic, and that's why they are caught up in this evil conspiracy to find this book that's going to do something bad. And he's not exactly sure what, but he realizes he has all of these people after him, and he's also having people like cast runes at him, so that, again, simple scenes like him just like talking to the teenage daughter at the diner triggers a fist fight with the owner and the kitchen staff, which for me was one of the funniest scenes because it has the perfect Martin Cambell thing of being just like a funny, weighty little fight as is, like just guys socking each other and throwing flour in their faces, using frying pans as weapons. I was like, this is Martin Cambell's like bread and butter.
Yeah.
He's like, Fred Ward is Bond.
There's
look at him go.
Yeah.
And
there's like, were you going to talk about the shot that it keeps cutting to of the guy just going, wow, I can't believe there's a fight happening.
Yeah.
That's such a fun, that the editing there is so good because you're just going like the steady. It's great.
And that's before the supernatural aspect kicks in, where like the ghouly looking dino demon like rises from the pot of soup in hellfire red lighting and is just like launching across the room screaming and munching on the diner owner and
Evil Dead,
chewing him to pieces.
Oh, yeah, I love that.
That really did have kind of an energy of Evil Dead, where it's just really sporadic and just so fast paced and aggressive. Like that
was the one where I was thinking about Dead Heat as well, when all the Chinese food comes back to life or whatever.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely, man.
Except Fred Ward just smacking him with a pan into the freezer and being like, all right, get out of here.
I didn't know that another movie was going to take so much from Dead Heat, but here we are.
I think every movie should take as much as they can from Dead Heat. It is
they should remake Dead Heat.
You know what? Genuinely should. That's the type of movie you should remake. A cool idea done a little weird. If you can go back and spruce it, that's what you need.
Yeah, I want that Uzi back and forth that the two zombies have at one point, where they just spray each other for like a solid minute. But I want it sequelized, just way bigger, rocket launchers, the whole 9 yards.
Oh yeah,
beautiful.
The only issue is that movie benefits so much from the fact that just the standard of what action movie craftsmanship was like around that time is partially why that movie is so fun. Like Mark Goldblatt had just worked on so many of those classic 80s action movies and like Terminator and stuff like that, that it was just a case of, we don't have as many guys like Mark Goldblatt sitting around anymore, unfortunately.
And that there was like, the episode certainly isn't the Dead Heat episode, although I would love that too. But a huge part of that, like that movie's character, is the fact that the script had huge swaths that was just supposed to be designated for Joe Piscopo to just riff, and when he read that, he's like, I like riffing, but I should get some kind of an rated arbitration credit. And a lot of that truly is like him on that day figuring something out and like beating it with Treat Williams. It's a delight.
Oh, it is.
Look at him go. You can tell watching that movie too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this I don't know if this quite has the focus of a Dead Heat. Yeah. They're not really the same movie. This one really is more interested less in the action set piecing because it's not made by Mark Goldblatt. Yeah. A legendary action movie editor. This one is Martin Cambell just, as basically as plainly realizing a really absurd and kind of delightfully ridiculous script, and having an overqualified cast there to help him get through that.
Because a lot of it does go through like kind of as we've said, the cliches. You have the romantic quality of it between him and Julianne Moore. You have everything with the background.
I will say, I love that rant that he gives to her about why he doesn't use magic.
Yeah.
And what makes me special is that I'm my own man. So long. He's like, everybody compromises, everybody cheats, they're so empty of ideals. And it ends on this great line. My collar may be a little frayed. Maybe I need a shoe shine, but nobody's got a mortgage on my soul.
Oh, yeah.
It's clean, man. It's clean.
Classic. And Fred Ward kills it. I got to be honest.
Yeah, and no one's phoning it in at any point in this, too, which is like...
No, it's 100% commitment, yeah.
You would think for a TV movie, like, some people would be slumming it, but no, it's... I can't say enough good things about this. I can say that it is a very weird move to have that whole character that's the love interest of like that guy that gets knocked off at the front who has the counterfeit Necronomicon, who is like the
trans character.
The trans character who they dangle is like, who's this mystery character? Where does she fit into the puzzle? Only for her to like have a reveal scene with Fred Ward where he punches her in the face, rips off her wig, and is just like, what the hell are you doing, you queer? What's going on?
And just starts slurring her left and right. Yeah.
Only for her to like dump exposition and immediately get killed is like one of the more unfortunate qualities of the 90s stuff, but I don't know.
Yeah, that was definitely an unfortunate scene too, because I actually briefly, and I guess I don't know if I was just feeling a little optimistic, but when the fact that like the character, they did go out of their way to say like this is the character's actual identity, and that the chauffeur that she was pretending to be to work for Amos in order to steal the Necronomicon was like the actual disguise of the character. I was like, oh, that's, at least they're, this is her actual identity, and she actually does just love this guy Mickey, and they just were looking to like work on this like housing development called like Vista Bonita, and so they're doing this whole thing, and I was like, oh, so they, she's like, we were just trying to get a little nest egg because they're outsiders, and we just wanted to escape and run away. And I was like, that's like a sympathetic view of this character. And then the whole scene is Fred Ward just abusing her, and then she gets punched immediately to death screaming by a giant gargoyle that then turns into a comedy beat of Fred Ward just being like, hold it there, Lon Chaney, and fucking kicking him in the nuts.
It is kind of wild just how
the tonal whiplash of where that scene goes is insane.
It is shocking, which in this like visceral sense makes the silly part funnier, but you do not want the premise to be, kill a trans person just kind of because we haven't really properly
just so
developed
gruesomely and so just like the fact that you see the fist literally go right through the chair and come out with like bloody gore on the other side, and I was like, God.
And it's like those like the beats of it when it comes to just the direction and the action is kind of interesting and fun and cool or whatever, but it's just what they've set up feels way
it's tired, man. And
just
speaking
worse
of like,
than it needs to.
Exactly. And speaking of 90s HBO, like Tales from the Crypt was mentioned earlier. That was a huge, like constant Tales from the Crypt crutch for episode twists, was just like, what if a character was actually trans and you didn't know about it because they allude to like some male character you don't know about. And at the end, it's like, I'm actually a girl and I'm going to kill you, which is, again, this guy probably thinks that this is like this clever trope of the genre, which at the time, I'm sure it was.
That was the one part of the script HBO read and went, "Hey, it's perfect. This is what we're this is what we're looking for."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I guess it feels like some of the things have actual commentary, and even if it is something that you see in the genre, it's not saying anything like satirical while it's doing it. It feels like, so it just feels kind of dirty and off, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one just felt really weak, and the movie didn't benefit from it in any kind of way. And honestly, it just makes taints kind of like one of the best moments in the movie, which is Fred Ward versus a gargoyle,
which is awesome.
Which is great.
Totally
like the second he kicks it in the nuts and the gargoyle just like, and he's shooting at it, the gargoyle has hands on his hips and the gargoyle is shaking his head. It's so silly. Yeah. And Fred Ward treating it at, even Fred Ward, the detail of him like grabbing his hat like Indiana Jones on the way out. Yeah. Like there's a lot of great like comedy beats. There's a lot of great visual design beats. Like that puppet is just fantastic. And even the bit when he goes to the housing development, there's one crazy matte painting shot that I was like, the amount of effort put into getting that shot is so unnecessary.
Yeah, I have no idea why they pulled out so many
like,
stops for this, but it easily could have been theatrical and probably would have had a longer life if it was.
Yeah, I heard for the longest time this was like a VHS and Laserdisc thing. It just kind of lived. That's all the only place that you could find this movie for the longest time. So people are kind of rediscovering it a bit.
Well, that's how I found it. I was introduced to it as like those movies that exist on YouTube because they're old enough or obscure enough that no one cares to copyright it.
Yeah.
I watched. Oh yeah, you guys would be into.
We're very aware of that.
Who am I talking to here? But no, that's how I was introduced to this movie, and like I will say to that effect. It has an unfortunate quality overall, and Lord of Illusion shares this. Perfect movie to nap to. The first like 3 or 4 times I saw this, I did not make it past the scene where the guy gets like the whirlwind of paper cuts in the bathroom because it's a movie you can tune in and out of so easily to go like, who's Fred Warren hanging out with? Oh, that's crazy. Yeah. And then go back to whatever else you were doing.
Oh, wait, this is the scene where he's at the police station and there's like vampires in West Hollywood? There's like vampires or I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's true. And because like, again, especially if you know these types of movies, like any general noir story, you're gonna know where this goes. So it is interesting in that sense that you can kind of go in and out of this and then just enjoy the moments, whatever you'd call them, like I don't know if the tableau would be the right word, but it's just like these scenes essentially, just that you can dive into every scene and no matter what character he's interacting with, it's kind of entertaining because we're dealing with such a strange world.
Yeah. And it is being just unique enough in some specific visual details and in some cues that the actors are, meant to be responding to that. Yeah, it really does carry it through to, the finale when he is being kind of chased around by everyone, every which way. He does end up stealing the Necronomicon from that gargoyle. And he is immediately captured by Clancy Brown, who's finally got his hands on it and kills the fucking stupid guy who paper cut the guy, the henchman who was like, you created all these problems for me. I'm just going to drown you real quick. And then I'm going to, and then also, Julianne Moore is also betraying you, even though you guys thought you were reconnecting because, she's also as cutthroat and greedy as I am.
Every time I looked at that character, what's his name? Cogswell or something, like his little henchman.
Tugwell.
If I don't know how online the two of you are, perhaps your listeners will track for them. If I say the name Devin the Selfie Slut, does that register?
No.
No idea what you're talking about. All of our listeners are screaming. They're screaming at us. I can hear them.
When we're off this, Google Devin the Selfie Slut. He looks exactly like him, and it was to my diseased brain legitimately distracting throughout the runtime. Yeah.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
What a great piece of conversation!
Well, you got to see him get drowned. So was that a positive experience?
Wow, he does look exactly like him.
Right. And he's a funny.
He looks exactly like him.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Oh my god!
No, it was a delight. I had so much fun.
Oh my god! Okay, I just pulled it up too.
Yeah.
Yep, encouraging all of our audience to just look that up if you don't know who that is. He does look very much like Tugwell. Absolutely.
Yeah. There you go. I've done you all a favor.
It does kind of become just what you are kind of expecting with the whole, Clancy is challenging him more. We get of course the double crossing with Julianne Moore, and then we get to the final the ritual
and
sacrifice,
the big summoning. Yes. Of course.
Yeah. Oh,
we gotta see.
Do you realize how long they've waited for me? Yeah. Centuries, millennia.
Yeah. You get like that big Cthulhu brain bug with the clearly like disgusting vaginal mouth. It was awesome in the feek.
Yeah, I really like the look of this. It's kind of fun that it feels like it's very much on a sound stage. The way that it looks, it kind of looks artificial just in certain shots, and I got a charm out of that. There are a couple moments that I thought. I really like the visual design of it, like the earth cracking and separating and all of that. I felt like there was a little bit of an underwhelming sound design. I don't know if you guys got that at all, but it just didn't feel like the visuals are really massive and kind of larger than life. And I just felt
the puppet is great. It's like the Rancor from Star Wars, but like it's as big as like the Blob or something. Yeah. It's like a huge thing. And yeah, I kind of agree that it felt like they ran out of didn't have a budget for like a bigger finale than that, even though it's ambitious, I think, for what it is.
And again, I really do like quite a bit of it. I mean, again, the design of it. It's just for some reason when it was like the ground was swelling and the lightning was hitting, I felt like there was like missing layers in the sound design just from just my personal perspective. But
yeah, I think it's a little bit of that. I also think maybe, and this is hard to fault the movie for, is David Warner going too hard? Is he convincing you too much that this is going to be like the craziest ending you've ever seen? Like that whole,
yeah, he sells it too hard for sure. Yeah.
Like the moon and the lightning and the way that he's like, the gargoyles like maniacally laughing and dancing, and like the mood of this moment where he actually opens up the book and is doing the summoning ritual, and it is like a minute or 2 minutes of crazy like thespian monologue over from the wells of night to the gulfs of space, consume the darkness, come forth. I was like, holy shit.
In my estimation, it was like not quite so much selling to me too hard that I'm going to expect something big. It more so felt like the editor was not quite doing his job with the script, like just to be like, okay, we don't need like a solid minute of this. If you say like Klaatu Barada Nikto, I'm just going to take whatever you give me.
Right. But what are you gonna cut? Go back through all those lines. Are you gonna cut ear, seducer, shaper of foul, dead, and betrayal?
Yes, dude, you need 30 seconds of that tops. Make the screen shake
teacher,
and rumble.
master.
No. The editor was just floored by Warner and was just like, I'm keeping it all in. Just couldn't help himself.
Oh my goodness!
They just needed to get. Warner deserved a bigger budget, I think, for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But it's still like you do have some cool moments where like the monster has this giant tongue that comes out of its like vagina mouth and tries to get a bunch of people, and it realizes, I think, that this is, I guess, where it all comes to this.
This is the craziest part of the movie.
Yeah, where the monster realizes that the daughter is no longer a virgin, so it refuses the sacrifice essentially, and then takes Warner instead.
You woke me up for nothing, you idiot. I'm gonna eat you.
Back down to hell.
It does the taste test of his daughter, and he goes, "P.U. This isn't a virgin I ordered," and then it's like, "I'm gonna get you instead. See ya."
Yeah, which honestly, that part of it is funny to me, and I do kind of think that that's great. It's just that when the result is because she ends up having sex with one of the cops who we didn't talk about it,
was taking her witness statement.
Yes, there's a scene prior to this where they're taking the witness statement and they're just clearly flirting with each other, and she's asking him like how
around
old
in the bushes.
He is, and it's just it's pretty bizarre, to be honest with you. And then this ends up being the reason why the world is saved, because this cop has sex with a 16-year-old.
Yeah, so and he's like, "Don't tell my wife."
And Fred Ward's is just Fred Ward's like, "Oh, don't worry, your wife won't care about this, so you saved the world."
Yeah, you're going to be a hero to everybody.
Grimaldi,
it all comes out in the wash.
You absolute legend.
Which is so...
It's crazy. It's really crazy. Yeah.
It's so crazy.
I couldn't believe it.
I feel like more than anything, I think they just wanted Grimaldi, give him something to do besides getting like punched in the face by some chick at the opening. Because like this is something that could have so easily been resolved by just going like, "You weren't really a virgin, were you?" And she can just go, "Well, what can I tell you?" Like you don't need to be like, "Oh, a grown married cop fucked her." Like that's not.
It's so specific. Yeah,
you're totally.
And
right.
also that he's awesome, and Fred Ward is like, that's the screw that say like this is the most heroic depiction of statutory rape ever put in a film that I've seen.
Yeah, it's wild how forgiving it really is to this character after. Doing
it's endorsed. It endorses statutory.
Yeah, like Fred Ward is like, fucking bring the fist in. Like,
there's
let's
even
go.
a line that the daughter has where she's just like, "Well, Cleopatra was 14 when she succumbed to passion." And you're like, holy fucking shit, we're bringing history into this? What are we doing? Stop it.
No, this is like basically the guy was like,
which is right after Julianne Moore was scolding Fred Ward for being Jiminy Cricket.
Yeah, for real.
You're a two goody two shoes, Mr. Lovecraft.
Is it supposed to be like? Is there? See, maybe again. I've watched quite a few noirs at this point, but and maybe it's a Lovecraftian thing or something to do with the rituals. I don't know. But is there some type of satirical element with this that I'm just not quite wrapping my head around?
Me,
you know,
well, it's meant to be a joke.
Zero.
Gotcha.
I would say it's not trying to be satirical. I think given that it was 1991, I think it thinks it's both funny and effective. That's just their logic.
Okay, yeah, a little edgy. Yeah.
Well, based on what we know of Hollywood at the time, I think it was probably a wink.
Very true. Very unfortunately true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just so
that also leaves a weird taste in your mouth alongside the gruesome treatment of the trans character early on. Just two qualities that you're just like, man, it makes it a little bit harder to recommend it as the coolest, funnest movie ever made.
Right, exactly. Because it does have some
You're like, it's slightly not the coolest, funnest movie ever made because
cool
of
and
these
fun,
things.
but not ist.
I do like his idea after there. He's just like trying to take comfort in thinking about people just talking in the morning about baseball and normal life. People just raw dogging life, apparently, basically. No magic at all.
Yeah.
It comforts him.
When I was flying to Texas, I didn't use any magic on the plane. Like 6 hours just straight.
6 hours straight, baby. I will say that the only thing, and most of the movie, I think it works. But I found it, for some reason, in particular, this last shot where he's in his office with this like really artificial red lighting, it looked bad in my opinion. Just this one scene, just this one part. I don't know why.
Well, that's just. I think the whole thing has an overall TV movie cheapness to it. It's just whether it airs on the side of being charming or whether it airs on the side of being like, nah, it's just a little cheap. Yeah, they could have put a little bit more effort in there. I do wonder if they ran out of money on this one a little bit, because it felt like there was a while where I was like, it looks more ambitious and like they spent more money on production design and effects work than I would have expected of this movie. And then there was other parts where I was like, that's a little hokey.
Yeah,
it walks that line.
Yeah, definitely. But still, it is fun for as many issues as it has.
Yeah, well, and he makes perfect sense to keep the Necronomicon, because he won't be he won't be tempted to use it.
Yeah, no, not him, not at all.
No, but and that. I think
we've said all we can say about Cast a Deadly Spell. We've cast.
That's all. That's about all that we can say. But we are going to enter the reductive rating round on Cast a Deadly Spell, which for you, Phil and Walker here, is where we remove all the words and all the nuance and give the movie a rating between 1 and 5. But it's also final statements or any lines or any scenes we happen to skip as we were talking. But yeah, for me, this got a solid 3. I think as solid of a 3 as you could give a movie that had some really ugly moments and scenes in it, partially because just the overall effect of it is very playful and very kitschy, and I was a complete sucker for this action figure ramming into each other thing of doing hard-boiled film noir in an alternate, Lovecraftian supernatural horror milieu where it just runs rampant in a very casual sense. I think it is cool to see Martin Cambell, who has a certain type of journeyman competency to him, working on an HBO Tales from the Crypt budget. Like, these are just such funny things to be have ever worked together, and it works together a lot better than you might think. And a part of that is because everyone seems to be in agreement on what this is and is playing it as relatively straight as one could. And all the actors, Fred Ward, Julianne Moore, Clancy Brown, David Warner especially, are all having a great time. Really fun lighting choices, really fun puppetry work. At a certain point, I just have to admit that Who Framed Roger Rabbit is one of my favorite movies ever. So just doing that, but putting zombies and ghouls and witches is good enough for me to have a great time for like 90 minutes. So yeah, outside of some of the more unfortunate regressive elements that popped up due to the period and due to, I don't know, maybe this writer being a weird freak. I have no idea, because I don't have much else to go off of. I do think that the gleeful genre whiplash of the entire movie is most of the time productive and fun and interesting to actually experience. And yeah, it's the type of movie where you'll get Fred Ward just chewing noir protagonist lines and then kicking a gargoyle in the nuts. And I will say too, I haven't mentioned it yet, but I watched Witch Hunt first because I was committed to going through the Paul Schrader filmography, and I did prefer it to Witch Hunt, which felt really, really like a for-hire gig. And it also it recasts Dennis Hopper as Detective Lovecraft, which feels like it would be like a great time. And it also has a great villain. Eric Bogosian plays the Joseph McCarthy-esque like senator who, instead of being anti-communist, is anti-magic, which is where they got the title from, because, you know, instead of it's like a witch hunt, you know, the House of Un-American Activities Committee. So it's a literal witch hunt in this case. But yeah, Paul Schrader, in my opinion, a little just sleepy behind the director's chair on that one. And
he was collecting a check.
That movie, honestly, it reminds me more of like Sam Raimi's Crime Wave than it does like this movie, despite the fact that it's like a sequel to it. So,
let's not besmirch Crime Wave in any implicit fashion. That is a treasure that we will continue to behold.
Well, okay, maybe. Okay, hold on. Let me rephrase. Larry Cohen's Wicked Stepmother. I can't upset anybody with that
You might upset me, brother. You have no idea how much of Larry Cohen's material I have cribbed and worshipped. Anyway, let's
God
proceed.
Damn it, I can't win.
Let's proceed.
We have to have a meeting when you get back.
Oh God.
But yeah, solid 3 for me.
I'd 3 it as well. The two major points that we've already covered are the things that probably leave the biggest sour taste in my mouth. But it's you just kind of have to, I guess, accept those things and have the fun with all the other stuff that is quite good. The plotting is very derivative, and you're going to see every little twist and turn coming, but I don't necessarily think that's the point of this. It does feel like it's just kind of taking what you know about the genre of noir and these detective stories, and then
you've never seen a gremlin in the corner of the room when it happens.
Yeah, exactly. Or zombie workers falling over, or things floating in bars because they're using magic to pour their drinks and all of that. It's just, you kind of just get some added visual flair and fun to the genre mixing of it all. I get what they're doing initially with the joke about the virgin sacrifice with the rituals, and I like the idea of the monster like spitting her out and all of that. I just don't think you needed the punchline to be rape. So maybe just rewrite that part. I
feel like that's a good note overall. Yeah, the punchline doesn't need to be rape. Anytime.
Yeah, it's probably all the time, most likely.
Yeah.
But I do think that Cambell is having like an absolute blast with this. I mean, I love when people are getting into gargoyle outfits and getting their balls kicked. That's hilarious. For how ridiculous this is, you'd be surprised at how hard Fred Ward, Julianne Moore, Clancy Brown, and David Warner are going with their characters. They're really having a great time with all of this dialogue. And honestly, the dialogue, when it is playing with the whole noir kind of suave and kind of that smooth talking thing that they do, it is pretty funny and does have some cool lines. It's just some of the other choices.
Julianne Moore, Fred Ward, we didn't mention it. They actually kind of have some chemistry together too.
Totally,
and, like they do. Yeah. And like there's a few moments where you actually feel bad for the Julianne Moore character when she's like, what was I supposed to do? Like go to the movies? Like I'm a working woman. I had to make my way up through, this magical world. And you just get Fred Ward just being like, don't do it, Connie. Whatever you think it's going to be, it will end up something else, which is a good rule.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of fun to be had here. Again, there's that stuff that really weighs it down, but it's still fun, and there isn't much like it, just in the sense of its tone and the exact mix up that it's doing with the two stories. So yeah, I think it's fun. 3 out of 5.
Cool.
For you guys,
I think I would give it probably like 3 1/4, because I think most competent movies, like warts and all, I think by and large, like I'd say 3/4 of movie are like 3 1/4. But yeah, I don't know. I have fond memories of this. This is in a regular rotation for a long time for me, of just, again, like I said, movies I would put on to fall asleep to, hangout stuff. It's a good time. But yeah, we've said pretty much everything we could say, but the last thing I do want to put in is, are either of you fans of Freaked?
Love Freaked.
Yeah, Freaked.
Yeah, with Alex Winter.
Yeah, no, I love that movie to pieces. But the actor that plays the zombie stiff under Clancy Brown is the same actor that plays the Toad Man in Freaked, and this is the only other movie I've seen him in. And I don't know his name. I've still, in between two roles, I've never heard him speak one line of dialogue. And I'm gonna have to hunt down his IMDb and actually dig through it. But yeah, that's where it sits for me. It's probably about 3.25, 3.5.
Oh, that's killer.
Perfect filmography. I just pulled this dude up. It's Freaked, Cast a Deadly Spell, Deep Cover.
Oh, that's amazing filmography.
That's the perfect filmography. Everyone can stop trying to get it.
Yeah, stop acting.
So for me, a 3 as well. I mean, I obviously don't endorse the behavior of all these characters in the movie, but yeah, no, it really moves. It's got a great look, and despite the tropes, it's a lot of fun. So no, it's like a classic 3 for me. I could put this on and be entertained.
Yeah.
Hell yeah! Our patrons have a term for that. The 3-star classic.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
the 3-star classic. The 7 out of 10 is my favorite movies. Yeah.
Yeah, they have a list going where it just is the you would easily. Oh, this is on? All right, I'm watching the whole thing. Okay. Maybe I'll sleep a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Halfway in between. Yeah.
Yeah,
beautiful.
And if this had been a TV pilot, I would have watched more.
Could you imagine Lovecraft Columbo? Ooh, Christ on the Cross! Yeah. I'd watch that every day.
Absolutely. But yeah, I think that's going to wrap it up here for Cast the Deadly Spell. We're going to be right back, and we are going to be talking about Clive Barker mixing the noir and the cosmic horror with Lord of Illusions. Stick around.
It's not real. Stop looking at me!
Next! You want to come with me, D'Amour? I've got so much power to give you. All you have to do is beg.
Clive Barker's Lord of Illusions.
All right, we are back, and we are talking Lord of Illusions, the 1995 fantasy horror neo-noir movie written and directed by Clive Barker, adapting his own 1985 short story from his horror anthology collection Books of Blood, and starring Scott Bakula as the occult specializing private detective Harry D'Amour, who finds himself in an LA conspiracy involving fortune tellers, illusionists, and the resurrection of a violent supernatural cult leader. This is, I believe, our third time talking about legendary British supernatural horror author turned filmmaker Clive Barker, probably most well-known cinematically for adapting his own novels like his cosmic sadomasochistic pain and pleasure body horror film Hellraiser, or what he referred to as his queer horror Star Wars, Nightbreed, which is, I think, maybe the last time that we talked about him.
Barker.
Honestly, the description's fairly accurate. It is actually has like a weird, like fantasy, like kind of a lighthearted get the team together and fight the oppressor, like kind of aspect to it. But it's a bunch of monsters in a cemetery and crazy.
Feels like hanging out with your unemployed friends. It's like little monsters.
Yeah, but Barker apparently wrote a number of D'Amour short story mysteries that I think at one point he hoped would like maybe even become a series or something like that, and he was excited to realize it when it came to the screen, and he picked the story The Last Illusion from his Books of Blood anthology because, as he put it, he was a dude who just he loved this shit. He loved like magic, and he also was a dude who was like obsessed with like religion and death and rituals, and he seemed, I don't know, very interested in the idea of like people who put on like those shows of that nature, where there's something kind of inherently gruesome about them, but they're also like this very just over the top spectacle in a kind of way. And I think he just figured it was a good theme in which to tell a horror noir story, and being a sort of like queer outsider artist who was involved in this very transgressive horror scene, he obviously also found a way to make it a demon scenario inside like a Manson style cult type thing. I think he mentioned found a guy who wants to become God and has ambitions of like seeing the other side, very much like a Hellraiser character might.
This is a genre that I do like in film, and again, I'd almost like to get a list going where it's like making magicians really cool. There's something about that I think
Chris Angel is the coolest guy on the planet. I don't know what you're talking about.
Angel in
that was my number one note.
It's incredibly challenging. So
yeah, I don't know like what was the chicken or the egg between this and Chris Angel, but if it is like the latter, he owes so much of his fucking life to Clive Barker. Like there's this movie, you could have called it Mind Freak and it would have worked out just as well.
Yeah, it's stuff up to like with all the chains, and everything that Chris Angel was rocking all the time. Like he's got the Clive Barker-esque kind of vibe for sure, but just very derivative in the lamer version. He's not quite Swan. He's not as cool as the character.
Phillip Swan's really cool.
Oh yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, we got a lot of Phils going on this episode.
Yeah, this has been a great day for
me. And I guess both of these kind of have that element that they like both movies, I mean, have that thing where they could be a series. It has that serial element, and in this, it almost goes with the story of the detective character, because he's kind of dealing with almost like PTSD from dealing with demons from the past cases and all of that,
which is arguably like
and that's the funniest.
No, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, that obviously feels like a little bit of a half-baked element just to kind of, like, justify his presence in a supernatural genre story. But I don't know. I like watching Bakula. He was having fun. Hot off Quantum Leap at the time. I'll watch him do whatever.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's one of the funny things that I was going to say is that, like, the Cast a Deadly Spell very much felt like a TV movie, and we were even mentioning that it could have been like a pilot for a great show of a Columbo Lovecraft show. It would have been great. This, I think, doesn't have the vibe of being a TV pilot, except for Scott Bakula feels like he has TV pilot leading man protagonist energy.
He's more like Harrison Ford in this for sure, yeah.
Yeah, and I think part of the issue is that Clive Barker is like just so much more passionate and alive when it comes to imaginative horror imagery than when he is figuring out the logistics of a crime story and figuring out like a noir story. And he kind of just goes back to, it's not like he's a stupid guy, but he kind of just goes back to, I think, the basics that he's probably read in like crime pulp paperbacks, and doesn't put a much more effort than that into the characterization. Because like you could imagine this, like Harry D'Amour actually doesn't have any more quality. Actually, he has less qualities that make him distinct than Mr. Phil Lovecraft, because at least Phil Lovecraft has like this whole like anti-magic persona. He has like a consistent thing that he harps on and makes him different from the other characters and makes him succeed in his mission. I was watching Harry D'Amour, and I guess Clive Barker's idea for him was that he's just a guy who can withstand insanity and suffering. Yeah, and like that's basically just it.
Yeah, his whole thing is like he almost wants to make him so generic that any everyday man can just put himself in that person's shoes and then be on this really hellish adventure.
Yeah. You can be John Constantine. You can be John Constantine.
Which is, I think, what you want for like a video game, but not like if you have aspirations to adapt this to series or like running like franchise of films, is just like, oh, I'm so fucked up from that one kid I saw with the devil. I can't believe it.
Yeah. Has anyone read the short stories, or like does he add any extra characterization? 'Cause it's interesting coming from the writer itself and him just being like, I'm purposely give a generic lead character so that you can put yourself in that, and then we can just have him go through a bunch of weird, series of events essentially. Has anyone read them?
I'm not sure. I have not read this specific short story.
Okay.
I would guess the fact that it's just him adapting a short story character into a 2-hour movie, and it's just the thinness, which just kind of is a little bit more felt. It's a little bit more pronounced. I think.
I'm curious if he does a POV as well. Like if it's a first person story, then he wouldn't necessarily have to Well, no, I guess it'd be the opposite. If it was a third person story, he wouldn't have to do as much characterization. Because if it was first person, you'd have his inner monologue and all.
Yeah,
of
he
that.
would have had at least one more noir trope. But I mean, Josh, as you were saying too, like 2 hours. This is like. Yeah, like definitely, you get a little sick of his kind of flat affect and how much he hates being in California and how much he wants to fuck that lady that isn't Linda Fiorentino. Like but like this is a story that could.
It's Famke Janssen.
Famke Janssen.
I have it. Okay, I have it in my notes. I just said that lady is like Linda Fiorentino, but not as scary. Don't know if that's a negative. That's what I heard. Because
still figuring it out.
That's a great
so much
note.
of this is like I like this movie just pure, like the strongest stuff in this is genuinely the noir elements, because like to bring up like Columbo again, like watching him get put into different scenarios and different mysteries that pertain to like different fields. Like I would have loved if this turned into like an Agatha Christie whodunit with all of those fucking freaks from the Magic Castle. That was the most interesting stuff to me. Like and like the bloody palm reading. That's well when you see like I don't remember the guy's name, but that character actor who's like the poster boy for Marfan syndrome, when he's in there doing the whole like is divinity and deluge. Like I loved him so much, and especially when he cracks with the Brooklyn accent, he's like "fuck you, pal." It was so fun.
Yeah, that's Vincent Schiavelli is doing that. He's playing the head of the Magic Castle dinner parties where all the pretentious magicians go, we don't like that Swan guy. That Swan guy,
he's better than all of us. It's the haters club. But all I was going to say there is that it feels like, because that stuff is the strongest part of it, it feels like a John Dahl movie or something that's being intruded upon by Clive Barker. Like, I know that like what kind of narratively carries it is like each of these people from the cold open are getting picked off. But I didn't realize that's what was happening till the second watch through, because they're so like unremarkable, and they change a lot of them over time. Agree. Like when I watch, like why are they doing that to that fortune teller? And like his excuse to get to California feels ripped almost directly out of Get Shorty. Like it has nothing to do with this like hack musician or whatever that he's trying to like catch for insurance fraud. Like that's just the impetus for him to get to the story.
Yeah,
they were like, you need a vacation, bro. New York fucking sucks. There's like demon angel exorcisms you're being asked to do.
Go to California where nothing weird happens.
And this and this thing, like I was becoming confused by certain moments of it, not because it's overly complicated, but I think that you're right, where certain characters just have a kind of bland quality to them, so you kind of you're not attached or thinking about them a lot. So when they come into the plotting of, you know, getting eliminated or being attached to the past or whatever, you just it just doesn't feel important or significant as it should.
Impact.
Yeah. But I do like this. The stuff about this movie that I do enjoy is when Clive Barker obviously gets to just do his horror genre stuff. I mean, anytime he's mutilating a body or dealing with kind of the more violent aspects of the magic, I think he's doing a really good job. It's just that when, like Josh said, I think it's when it goes to the noir plotting and all of that, it's very generic, and he just doesn't seem to care much about the characters themselves, rather than destroying their bodies by at a certain point, which it seems to be Clive Barker's like mission statement a lot. Well, of the
because
time.
For me, this is bookended by Clive Barker, what Clive Barker was passionate about. Like the prologue in the desert in the 80s, where you see this character Nix, played by Daniel Von Bargen, who we just talked about 2 weeks ago in The Faculty as one of the body snatch teachers, but he's also on Seinfeld. So if anyone likes Seinfeld, you want to see this guy go crazy, sadistic, Manson-like God mode, cult leader mode. Because the opening is his like Spawn Ranch hideout, and he's like holding like magic fire in the palm of his hand. He's talking about cleansing the world. He's gearing up to sacrifice like a little kidnapped girl to a fucking mandrill. I was like, what the fuck is going on? Like, this is like pure Clive Barker, just
and like
insanity.
We have no explanation for why the monkey's doing that, or how that fits into the puzzle.
Right? No. No, he just literally drops you right in, and he drops you into like, because I will say I like that, you know, novelists do this a lot where they have a sense of like history beyond the page. So there is a sense of like when Kevin J. O'Connor rolls up as Phillip Swan, Kevin J. O'Connor, obviously of There Will Be Blood and The Master and The Mummy fame for all the real heads. Oh yeah. He rolls up in a raid essentially as one of the former members to set this kidnapped girl free and confront his leader, who he used to be a disciple of. And this guy is like threatening to fucking eat his soul and like talking about seeing through God's eye and all this kind of shit. And they end up basically burying him in the ground, one by like shooting him in the heart, and then taking this iron mask and like screwing it like into his face until he dies. Yeah, that's the Clive Barker touch where he finds something. And the way that he does the close-up of it, just like the screw like being twisted into his temples and stuff like that.
So
disgusting.
good, yeah.
The chest burst too is like incredibly violent and center right in the center of the frame and everything, the way he frames it.
Yeah. So anytime he gets to go to this just disturbing kind of erotically flesh obsessed, like ritualistic horror that he does, it like you can really feel him coming alive. And I do think that that's like part of the charm, I guess, of Barker as a filmmaker is, and we said this when we talked about Hellraiser, is just that he really did not have any formal training when it came to filmmaking and the craft of filmmaking. And Hellraiser, even when I go back and watch it now, like it's a really impressive debut movie because it's like somehow overcomes everything that would be chintzy and kind of amateurish about it. And I think, unfortunately, part of that is because it is just such a straight shot. Like, it's very economical in terms of what's disorienting and shocking and unpleasant about the movie. And it contributes to the like the vibe of it, how inescapable and scary it actually ends up kind of feeling and how disturbing it feels. And this one, it opens that way, and I was kind of like, dude, does everyone just like hate another Clive Barker movie that fucking rocks? And then I went, oh, he needs to sustain like a character history, and he needs to sustain
an hour and a half
like
more.
scenes of characters delivering exposition. And I kind of went, this is the stuff that like Martin Cambell went to school to learn how to do this stuff.
This is what I meant by like, it's Clive Barker intruding on himself in that sense, where it's like we know as the audience what he's good at and what we want to see from him and what we like to see from him, but it's him trying to.
And there's nothing wrong with ambition. Like go shoot for it. But it was also like like you're following in a tradition of film noir where some of like the best filmmakers ever have done scenes like this, and just seeing someone.
It's where his like phonetic qualities really do him a disservice, because it's good to be an auteur and you get those senses, but when you try to approximate something you only know on a surface level, that's how you get Bakula staring at like that guy in the in the motel when he's like philandering with the hookers and he's just like eating a burrito for a very long time. Like
And that also, I think
this is one where you're not surprised the studio asked him to trim it, right? Because we talked about this on Nightbreed, but like Nightbreed is like one of those very famously like studio hatchet jobs. Now, I think that one was pretty unfairly. Like it sounds like he pitched that one as like an epic and they agreed to shoot it. And then they were terrified at what he turned in. And there's some stuff to it that's maybe, you know, a more trained filmmaker could have cleaned up. But I think some of the ways that he went crazy in that movie are charming. I did watch the director's cut for this one as a first time watch because I was curious what the studio asked him to trim.
Like 12 minutes of footage, I think, that is added in. If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and some of it I understood, and there were a couple ones where I was like, oh no, they should have left that in. He was kind of right about that one. There's a couple mood sequences. I don't know, did everyone else watch the theatrical director?
I think I watched the theatrical. Yeah, I think it's theatrical. I'm almost certain.
Yeah, I watched the theatrical,
Josh, do you remember if yours is like 2 hours flat? Because I think the ones that we watched are like, it's like an hour 48, something like that.
Yes, I watched the one that was 2 hours and 1 minute.
Okay, then that's...
So I watched the even longer version.
Wait, I did know. You're right. I did watch
look at that.
Director's cut.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there is more violence, which it's got stuff in it for sure in the theatrical version. It's just very shortened a lot of the time, it feels like. And to be honest, in those moments, I was even thinking, am I missing something? And it turns out I was when I went to do the research. So.
Right, and I think I appreciated that in a Clive Barker fashion, the violence was quite drawn out. So I think I would have missed that in the theatrical.
Yeah, for sure. And I think going briefly back to his Hellraiser movie, it being so, it's essentially one location that he kind of expands on a lot of the time with that movie, and so he doesn't have to balance as much when it comes to, you know, just changing the aesthetic of a shot or a scene or whatever it is. With this, of course, because it's a noir and it's a detective film, and you know he's solving a mystery, he has to go from place to place, and I think he gets a little bit lost in that as well when he's trying to strike this kind of really dark mood the whole time, and he does do it for quite a bit of it. I just think there's moments that he doesn't quite capture well enough. Mostly with the pacing.
Yeah, he just doesn't have the control quite over pace or performance, and a little bit over mood. I do think this has some great moody, like horror procedural sequencing in it, like especially if we're comparing it to Cast a Deadly Spell and the sort of comic angle that obviously takes. Like there's a lot of lack of tonal control that it is just doing because I think it's inherent to the material that's being adapted. Right. This one tries to maintain tonal control, and I actually do think that he manages to fit some of the more grotesque and erotic things he likes to put into the movie, and he makes some of them like blend in decently. Like there is
they don't they don't feel completely out of left field, right?
Yeah, like the fact that this prologue kind of sets you up that there is going to be this like supernatural satanic quality where they are like, they've basically mummified this dude and put him underground, and his assistant has like Butterfield, played by Barry Dale Sherman, who's also in There Will Be Blood. Actually, this is the Paul Thomas Anderson reunion. He escapes and like screams into the desert, and you kind of know that this is all going to kind of, you know, come back around, and it's going to trigger the series of supernatural events that will be felt 13 years later by Harry, who is, you know, essentially gets to go to LA thinking that he's taking an insurance fraud case, and ends up, instead of going on vacation, stumbling across this occult conspiracy that is mostly him just like going through a series of like 90s LA location work that is, some of it's a little grimy at first, like when he's in like the scumbag motels and like low rent fortune teller like suites and stuff like that, and then eventually helps him uncover Swan. And I think the thing that makes it feel a little paced wrong is how much information we have that it takes him so long to figure out, which is that like we know the entire prologue history, and as a result, you're sitting there waiting for him to figure out the things that you just already know. And it takes him like an hour to like an hour and a half to maybe get the full view of everything. And you're just like, dude, just ask someone a question, or ask someone for the, and they're being a little cagey about it, but
it's a good trope to have like the detective in over his head, but it's not good when you feel like you're smarter than the main character. Right?
It's good when there's well-developed scenes, I think, too. Like when there is a moment of like when he finds the one dude being gruesomely like scalped to death by Butterfield, and like his bald, angry, like,
his little skinhead homie.
Dude.
You definitely feel that guy. Throughout the meat of the noir stuff, you definitely feel the strongest Clive insert is definitely Butterfield and his little freak boy. Like they're the character, like his, like like the scalpel. I've never seen anyone in a movie whose signature weapon is a scalpel, and I think it works so well for him.
Oh yeah, they have a lot of scenes where, like, the first, like the fortune teller just having a bunch of them sticking out of him is just an incredibly painful looking image. And then they have a shot too where he starts digging into some guy's face, and like you see the skin get cut up and in the blade dig under the skin. It's pretty violent.
And he gets to deliver such a perfect Clive line too in the fortune teller scene where he's like, that whole thing about like, oh, when someone dies, you can see the spirit leave the body, but if you're quick enough, you can catch it. And then he just rams it into his neck. It's fucking great.
Oh yeah, that stuff's awesome. And it does feel, again, with the pacing, or at least with how it's delivering the information to the audience, it just feels like with a little, maybe just don't have the prologue, and then if you opened up with the detective and his PTSD, that would at least just initiate like, hey, we're in a place where demons are a thing.
Yeah.
So you do have that, but then we can be along with him while he discovers everything. You'd still probably have all the cliches of, you know, the pacing of when he discovers them, who's in on it and who isn't. I think all of that is still there. It's just, it is strange to deliver you the entire case and then you're watching him do it for, like Josh said, like an hour.
Yeah.
It's too long. It's too long in that regard.
Yeah, and he tries to sustain it through mood. He tries to sustain it through like the one guy, you know, getting all these scalpels in his body and then being like, "You must walk the line between heaven and hell." You know, you are drawn to the dark side. And I was like, that's an interesting characterization. I wonder if Scott Bakula will play that on his face at all. And I was like, not quite.
Yeah, he plays him more just kind of straight laced and macho. And in moments that works, but I agree that with a Clive Barker, you almost want the lead character, even if he starts that way, for his mind to kind of deteriorate, you know, become something else as the film goes on.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. He just
I wanted to know the
same,
history behind the tribal back tattoo as well. That feels like a Clive Barker touch. That I was like, explain.
Bakula back tattoo was something else.
I thought we were going to get exposition, but I don't think we do.
No, we don't. Did I miss something, or is that in that's I watched the director's cut and it was not explained.
Yeah, I was like, we watched the director's cut. That should be the one where he explains it.
Yeah, you guys were going to give me some answers here.
Sometimes I just don't like easy answers. You know, I don't like everything served in a gold platter to me.
Yeah, well, it's part of his mystery. We'll never know.
That's you got to read the novels to get
Yes, we'll never truly understand Harry Damour.
Also, perfect noir detective name, Damour. Fucking hell,
Damour.
Oh man.
Yeah, but yeah, it really is Scott Bakula walking around LA, basically trying to figure out what the prologue of the movie is, and asking characters to be like, is anything going on here? And he discovers Swan, and I do think that I like the Swan character, and I do think that. Like Kevin J. O'Connor is obviously, he's just I find he's, even in something like The Mummy, he's overly committed to that role. And he is pretty committed to the way that he plays like just the most depressed, wealthy stage illusionist you've ever seen, because essentially he has spent the decade in between living in a Bel Air mansion with his new beautiful wife Dorothea, played by Famke Janssen, who we also just actually talked about recently on 2 weeks ago.
Oh yeah, she's the teacher.
And also,
no,
that's right.
Linda Fiorentino.
Speaking of statutory rape,
sure.
Speaking of statutory rape.
Yeah, that's two weeks in a row, unfortunately, where that movie was kind of like...
Perhaps a little in this movie, too, considering the fact that like he rescues her when I think she says 12, and then we're to assume that they carried out a relationship.
That's true. They do mention it is not a romantic marriage, but he kind of wants it to be.
Even in
I don't know.
Romantic marriage, there's some things that a husband and a wife do together.
Yeah, it's a little strange, but also we can mention, too, Famke Janssen of GoldenEye fame. So it came out same year as Lord of Illusion. So she worked with Martin Campbell in the same year. Just connections all around. But Swan is, big receding hairline, mop on his head, giant cigar. And he is a little clearly dismayed and tortured by the fact that he is essentially a glorified optical illusionist at the Pantages Theater. He's not a real magician who does like scary, evil, powerful, real magic, because he's terrified that real magic is one day going to climb its way out of the ground and come and kill him and get revenge against him.
This is the big part of the mythology for Barker in this, right? Is that there's real magic and then there's illusions and the villain,
but both dabble in death. That's definitely his consistent obsession.
Yes.
Yeah, I gotta say, I love how awesomely tacky the show is. The lights, the fog, the satanic temple imagery with like fire shooting out. All the showgirls like dancers doing a routine around a skeleton monster, in a jar filling up with sand.
That was like the whole stage set looks like a psychosexual Yu-Gi-Oh card. Like that huge like like the monster, like the dragon that's got bug eyes with like a huge pussy on the front of it, and like all those people barely covered doing
that impales the skinhead.
Like produces like from the skeleton, he just like fills it with like Etch-a-Sketch dust, and he's like, "Here I am." Like that would, very you go full foot to the floor Barker mode, and that whole scene where he's like the trick fucks up where he gets like crucified onto the spinning wheel. That like felt like a slasher beat to me. Like that was so perfect.
That's a Hellraiser kill.
Yeah.
That is like a guy being strung up and tortured and being like, okay, you need to unclasp each limb before the dangling sword falls on you while you're attached to a spinning pentagram. That is something that a pinhead would do to a guy.
Which is of course bad, but when the swords hit you, you do come a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like it does have, because of the trap element, it also has that pre-Saw thing. Every time I see anything that's pre-Saw and has this element, I get kind of excited. I'm like, oh, Jigsaw this is where his inspiration drew from. But yeah, it's I also, this was the part where I wrote down, oh, this guy is Chris Angel, because of the moment that he that he comes down with the entombed like hourglass or whatever, and then it explodes and he's levitating. I'm like, that's Chris Angel
big time
all the way. Come on now.
And I gotta say, like, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah,
what's the name? What's the character's or the actor's name again? It's like Kevin J.
O'Connor.
As much as he is competent in the movies he's in, every time I see him, I immediately think, oh, Tom Noonan like lost weight. This is cool. I haven't recognized him before I clock who it is. But I have to say, throughout this whole thing, and this may just be me and my own biases and my own like editing in my head, but if I said to you like Swan and Butterfield, imagine swapping both, if not one, just one of those actors out with Brad Dourif. I think this movie would have been 10 times better, because that's exactly the type of freak he's built to
Okay,
make.
well, that's really unfair. That's really unfair, because I could say that about any movie. I could go back through every episode of this show that we've done and be like, hey, but imagine it's Brad Dourif, and I'm like, okay, that's a better movie.
Specifically to a Brad Dourif type character, because you couldn't say that about doing Harry D'Amour. But yeah,
I understand.
It just kept screaming it at me.
That'd be awesome, though.
I don't know.
Imagine the unhinged quality that Dourif brought to Harry D'Amour. Oh my god,
where is he?
That's what we needed. Holy shit! I wish like there's elements of his character too that they kind of only set up in the beginning, which I wish they dove more into. And and I think this is a Clive Barker thing too. At one point where he sees the fortune teller get all the scalpels in him, he does the Father, Son, Holy Spirit with his hands. So he has like this religious element to him. And then he also has a line where he says something like, it's like you can't have too many saviors, and that's why he knows so much about every religion or whatever.
Yeah, and at one point his cross necklace is like dangling over like the sand pit at one point too, when he's trying to save Famke Janssen near the end too.
And so I guess it's just as simple as like he versus demons, so he has faith. But I do wish that they, did some like Paul Schrader-esque kind of questioning with the faith.
Well, no, you need a tortured believer for that. Clive Barker was not that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. We needed a legit Catholic in here to really get the guilt going.
Yeah, you got to buy what you're selling.
Clive Barker believes in the flesh. That has been the constant throughout all of his movies in this case. And that is partially what the villain of this movie tries to do too, right? Is he tries to remove love. He tries to remove faith. He tries to be like, just look at the fellow people around you as literally like a sack of like a skin suit that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't matter. That's like part of the illusion that he gets into their minds and shows them like their skin tearing in this weird, like kind of what looks like a hybrid CGI / practical effect of just like their skin just tearing off,
which is cool. There's moments in this where I will admit, obviously, there's moments of the CGI that definitely is dated. And
there's one
90s.
Really horrible CGI fight sequence in this that I was like, I
just wrote down.
Yeah, that one's
like just in comparison to like the great effects that exist throughout the rest of the movie. Like even just like the sequence of the sword coming down on him and then impaling the skinhead and all of that. And we'll get into some of the the actual like mummified creature finale. But like the makeup work in this is done by Greg Nicotero and Robert Kurtzman. Who were famous special effects artists who worked on every major slasher franchise in the late 80s and into the 90s. Obviously did fucking Evil Dead 2, and they were Wes Craven's guys for a while. They did Men in Black, Tales from the Hood, The Walking Dead. Robert Kurtzman, actually, speaking to your point, Jamie, he directed Wishmaster.
Oh, hell yeah.
That's funny.
I do get vibes of that in this.
Yeah, bits and pieces.
Or mostly the fusion of these of both of these movies, just because you have the fantastic elements that lead to like all the magical deaths. So it's automatically just kind of innovative, and it has a lot of imagination in them because they have to. It makes sense with the logic.
Yeah, do you know what this movie needed? It needed Andrew Divoff as the djinn in The Wishmaster, actually like spending more time going around murdering all the characters rather than waiting for them to summon him for the last like 10 to 15 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, because he is a good he's a great part to the prologue, and he is really fun at the end. But you're right that you're kind of you're waiting on him because there's not a real antagonist until him, besides the fact that you have the cult trying to resurrect him, of course, and those like the two dudes that we've been talking about, the one with the scalpel and then there's the guy with the sharp teeth. Like, they're interesting, and every time they pop up I do have a lot of fun.
They have great outfits.
The skin tight snakeskin pants,
the gold pants,
and like, but I get what you're.
I really
I get what you're saying, Jamie. Like, they're interesting and they carry things, on a functional level, but they do, for like all of the movie, feel like lackeys without someone to kick up to.
Yeah, you're waiting for the big bad, and you kind of only get it.
Yeah,
and a few minutes at the end. It's disappointing. Yeah. So
you're kind of getting this threat of a big threat coming, but it's and it does eventually. And when he and I will say I really liked the finale in this, and we'll get to it, but it's just that I felt like it spins its wheels longer than it should, of course, which is, I think, something we've already said. But
yeah, there's a little too much time spent on Harry being really, really turned on by Swan's wife, who's now a widow because Swan has killed himself during his own show as part of the plot. And, and then Harry, essentially is starting his investigation proper, obviously being hired by her to go and find out, Swan's friend was killed, and now possibly he was just stabbed to death by a ritual stabbing that resembles like a tarot card image. And he's like, I think that Butterfield and this punk buddy are like behind it, but there's got to be more. And she's not telling him more, even though we know that it has to do with this Nick's character who they think is coming back. And when he starts his investigation, it really is like, there's the good scene where he goes to like the magic. It's a silly scene, but it is fun, where he goes to literally to the magic castle and is like, so you guys magicians, what's up? And they're like ranting about divinity and trickery and he's like, saints and messiahs were nothing but Houdinis.
He was like, I can replicate any miracle that's ever happened on page.
And then you like,
it's so funny.
They come back to the magic castle later, and you see the extent to which like they actually achieve that as far as like their group is concerned, and you get to see that hologram. Like when he goes back with like the guy that isn't Mark Dukakis to like fish out those files or whatever, and there's that like projected monster that's totally left field that immediately is like a fake, like a throwaway thing.
Hologram
exactly,
thing.
because it just looks so out of place. It looks like something from like a rejected Charles Band movie or something. And that like
it's like a Frankenstein with a brain coming out of its head. Like it looks like it doesn't have the top of its head or something.
I did like that it was essentially a hologram that he thought was a ghost, and he like pulls a gun out on it. I was like, dude, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do to the ghost?
I have to say, this was one of my favorite details for the character Harry Demure. We were just talking about the really bad CGI fire part. At one point he tries to shoot the fire because he just has no other options. And I thought that I laughed so hard. I thought that was great.
Yeah, it's fucking the Lawnmower Man astral projection. I know that stuff doesn't age well, but I love seeing shit like that in 90s movies.
I really liked it. I thought it was uncanny.
It's endearing.
Yeah. Putting a gun to a hologram's head is just fucking hilarious. I think that's awesome.
Oh, man.
Yeah, well, and it's through those that he discovers that like Swan was not particularly popular in the magician community because they kind of thought his tricks, one, they might have just been jealous of how fucking sick everyone loved his show and everyone thought he was awesome, but also that he was using some of Nix's, genuine powers that he was taught, and it kind of made them uncomfortable that he was doing real magic, which was honestly, it's very funny. The real magic it's literally fireballs, levitation.
Yep.
Or playing with people's minds. Those are actually the only three things that anyone does with real magic, and those are the things that he does for his show. And he starts going through all of Swan's friends trying to find out, well, clearly, someone's killing people off or whatever. And he goes to that one where he finds like the woman Jennifer has been committed to the mental institution for like ranting and raving about the fact that this crazy sorcerer Satan guy might come back. And, you know, she ends up just getting like hit by a car because she thinks that construction worker digging a ditch is like them digging him up and which again, it insists
on this thread. And it was so like, they just feel anticlimactic and they eat up so much of the runtime, because that felt like if in From Beyond, like Jeffrey Combs like busts out of the hospital and then just gets hit by a car. Like, think of all the things you could have done there with all of those characters as a through line, instead of just being like,
one by one. The one thing that I'll say is I do like that he finds a way to get some chilling mood into trying to make his, like, as he's getting deeper and deeper, Harry, sort of like the nightmare sequences come in and the details of like his case are dissolving into these traumatic flashbacks of like the demon angel stuff that went wrong. They are doing this element where I don't know if you guys got it in the theatrical cut or not, because I think it might have been cut. There's one thing that they should not have cut if it was cut, which was all of the early montages of the disciples, because all the people who summon the mummy at the end, did you guys get the earlier scenes of them?
No, we did. You know, I know that's okay. No. That bridges that gap.
That's actually one of the things in the director's cut where I was like, this is decently paced out, because you get small details of just people in different communities kind of around the country, and they start just committing random, like almost Cure-esque murders. So one of them does one by like letting all these snakes out of the zoo, and you get the shot of this dude who's been just bit by all these poison snakes. You get another one of a woman who murdered her entire family at like a kitchen table, and so like the dad has like a knife in him and is bleeding into the table, and there's actually a shot of like a dead kid in the middle of the floor. And then you get scenes of like those characters getting into their cars, and the one guy's got snakes in the back of his cars, and they're all driving to the desert because they've all been they're feeling this call.
Yes, this makes sense. And I would have
So this is one of the things in the director's cut, that the studio cut, that I went and I read that and I went, this was one of the things they absolutely should not have cut, because it's the only thing that gives you any sense of we're building towards the finale, and all of these disciples are the random murder montage chaos of what they're doing is already starting.
More interesting than like seeing all these like other fucking like just degenerates hanging around like, oh, I'm sick in the brain. Yeah, exactly.
Just random people.
Yeah. And they also, like, it's kind of confusing in the theatrical cut. At least it was for me, because there's at a certain point they cut to these disciples who are beginning the actual ritual, when it, like, they're in the house again that you see in the prologue, and they're all, you know, they're like shaving their heads and laughing maniacally and everything like that. And it's kind of a real jump to that, where you don't get anything prior. So your brain almost forgets that he had these disciples, and that they, you know, as a collective were doing this just because they had,
because Butterfield is the only one you're aware of throughout the rest of the movie if you don't have these ones, right?
Like nothing's changed. They've been hanging out in the desert, not aged a day.
Yeah, that's what it comes off as. It was really strange. It felt very jarring, and that seems like an essential thing they should have kept in.
And they're just like chop topping themselves the next time you see it, like, like,
yeah. It feels out of nowhere, honestly. So I kind of want to see the director's cut just to see.
Because I was going to say, like that's the stuff I like. Like, I liked that more than I liked him kind of going through the motions of some of the classic noir developments, like Dorothea and Harry obviously make jazzy love to one another because they are being connected by the case of her dead husband. I will say the director's cut sex scene is apparently much more longer and more graphic, and I was like, oh, Barsha was like,
they just kind of cut away. Yeah. In the theatrical. Disappointed.
He shoots them beautifully. He's like, they are gonna lie naked, sprawled in the bed. He's like, we are gonna the slow motion tribal back tattoo where you're gonna get it all.
Now is put to shame.
Yeah. Putting that in the notes. Check out director's cut.
Yep. But you get that, and you also get, you know, the developments that it turns out her marriage to Swan was, you know, not the reason it was functional thing that she felt she owed her life to him because she was the kidnapped girl who he saved from the ranch. And then there's also Swan faked his own. There's just a lot going on. Swan fakes his own death so that, he was like, well, I did it because then he wouldn't come after me or my friends anymore. And then, you could literally see Bakula just be like, well, I think he's still gonna come after them though, right? Because like you all killed him, and like actually she specifically is the one who actually shot him, and he's gonna remember that. I feel like he's like, yeah, I didn't really think this through. I guess I'll help you take him down.
I don't know. This is a very forgiving man.
Yeah. So like that's where the classic noir things rub up against like. I don't think Barker really wrote characters that necessarily maybe made sense, or characters that were making decisions that made sense in that kind of. They made more sense making decisions with his kind of story about like a guy who was just so tortured and guilt-ridden and was like, what if I committed ritual suicide in front of everybody? And that's cool. It's just and it doesn't make much sense when he just goes, dude, why did you do that? And he's like, yeah, why did I do that? Anyway, we got a finale to get to.
And the thing is once it hits the finale, like you could tell that this is where Barker is just a lot stronger when it comes to his just his fetishes, I suppose, and what he's really interested in. Just because now he gets to have the thing where the ritual takes place, the guy is resurrected. You can have all of the violent imagery that he's obsessed with. For one of the examples is the disciples. After they shave their heads with razors, I believe they start like cutting their gums with razors, and then they take glass and they break it, and that's where Barker comes alive. And they put their knees on it so that they can worship him with a blood flow. Like it's just it's very much.
And it's so satisfying for them to acquiesce that, and then for him to just go, "Psych, you guys all suck. I only like the one you all hate."
I loved it. I actually loved that moment.
It looks so disappointing.
So mean.
Yeah, well, because it obviously builds to, Harry convincing Swan to come back from the grave and, from the Vegas trickster style and to help stop Nix from coming back supernaturally. And it leads to this cult worshipping resurrection finale where the collection of disciples have, as we've been saying, messily shaved their heads, gone chop top style. They've done these like bloody like cave drawings. They're kneeling on the broken glass and screaming and suffering for him. And my favorite detail is Butterfield literally digging him up and taking this rotten mummy cadaver, throwing it on the table, unscrewing the iron mask and pulling it just off of his face, and the camera doing shit like going into his heart as his green organs start to expand back into his body like a balloon. That was a great shot. You get the crazy like ceremony chanting and all that stuff. It's like there's a lot of really fantastic, just grotesque, ritualistic body horror that Barker just has just a pure sicko imagination for. And the makeup effects are done by a team of guys who know how to do this shit. So they are disgusting. They are tangible. And, and there's so many grotesque details. Like speaking of From Beyond, they steal the pineal gland, like forehead, little like penis thing.
But they give him like a micro situation. He doesn't ever get to fully flex. No,
he doesn't get to pop it out. No, it's a little sad.
I do like the way that they have used the magic that they've kind of set up. Like at one point, he takes Swan, or the wife of Swan, Dorothea, and he's like floating above a ground that he destroys and makes this kind of like circle to hell, essentially. And it's just a cool way to do it physically, of like threatening her rather than just grabbing her, choking her, and then just being like, I'll kill her if you do this. It's just to add to the imagery and the kind of supernatural elements.
Oh yeah, and doing a literal Fulci-esque like gate to hell, and even having an ending shot that kind of looks like the last shot of the Beyond, and like he is trying to enter a more like hysterical subterranean place that I was like, this is where Barker belongs. This is exactly the kind of stuff that he's good at. Like the image of him sinking all of those followers into the sand and being like, well, this is in exchange for my return, and none of you are even actually worthy, and the people, the old ones down there like won't accept this because none of you are worthy. And the way that he turns them into like these like Pompeii volcano corpses, but they're actually still like alive. Sand zombies that are still alive, and they're like grabbing at like Femke Jansen and stuff.
Yeah, there's stuff like where
gross.
there's one where you can see just an arm for the concrete, so the rest of the body is there, and you can see like slight movements of the arm, or somebody with like half their mouth concreted, and they can still see their eyes moving and stuff. It's really, really nasty stuff. The other one that is really cool is where, and again, it's just that supernatural element. It's during, I think it's when he's creating the hole in the ground to hell, and it also starts to rain and like storm clouds start to form inside and all of that. So there's a lot of really interesting elements that you're kind of waiting
and
for.
And it is the finale that just keeps going and keeps going. You're just like, oh, they're going to shoot him in the head, and they're going to like, how many other things can they do to
that point where like they tried to turn the fact that like Swan was levitating a car over Damour's head in his hideout. They half-heartedly try to turn that into a setup payoff where he's like, remember the car? Do to me what you did to the car. And like that scene doesn't need it because he just digs his hands in his guts and rips it out. He didn't need to be like 5 feet off the ground to do that.
It is kind of funny the way that they end up setting it up. And it's almost just, correct me if I'm wrong, like after he lifts him up with the levitation power and throws him at Nix, he just kind of pushes him into the circle of hell, right?
Yeah.
Like
that's just it. He just falls to his death.
Just given all the things that we have set up, like he does feel very powerful given the levitation, the ground's crumbling, he's forming clouds inside, like he, all these supernatural elements, and then all of a sudden
his whole thing about like I was born to murder, and I'm gonna show you all that you are all just flesh, and he's trying to make Swan like his second in command, and
you just
all this kind of stuff. But yeah, it does feel like he had these images in mind, and he kept finding a way to write himself to them. Like he's like, Swan's got to shoot a fireball into Butterfield's face, and then Butterfield's not going to die though. He's got to come back, and Harry's going to shove him into an electrical outlet, and he's going to shoot blood out of his head because he's being electrocuted so hard. Which I was like, I don't even know if that makes sense, but it's a cool image.
Yeah. I do like his whole speech about, not wanting to become God any longer and just show the world despair. The one line he has is kind of
I was a man
cool.
who wanted to become a god, then changed his mind.
Yeah, where it's like the grave is lonely, but living is worse. Like, damn.
Crank out all those good one-liners.
Yeah, exactly. Before he gets Sparta kicked.
But it really just says he gets kicked down a hole, Swan's flesh gets torn off in CG, and he implodes back into his grave, and everyone just goes, hell yeah, flesh is a trap.
Only magic
and
magic was what sets us free.
I agree, by the way.
So
I do like just speaking on the bad CGI. I thought, even though it's obviously CGI, the face peel kind of worked for me, to be honest. I don't know why, but there was something about the uncanny valley of that whole thing that still worked. Yeah.
Sometimes uncanniness goes in its favor.
Yeah.
And I think that's okay. But yeah, pivoting, I think, towards the reductive rating round on Lord of Illusions here. This one also ended up getting a solid 3 for me. Yeah. I did mostly like the aspect. I like Clive Barker's ambition to be like, I'm going to combine my cosmic sadomasochistic body horror with a hard-boiled private eye, like neo-noir story. I don't know that he, had the time to become a skilled enough filmmaker to be particularly good at the latter genre, as much as he was so naturally at the former. But I appreciate the attempt. It is ambitious. It's cool that a studio gave him the money to do this with just a famous TV actor and was like, kind of go to it. And that they did, because of what happened with Nightbreed, he was like, you can do whatever you want with my movie as long as I get a director's cut. And so the director's cut is actually fairly available, so you can grab it. I think I don't know if maybe it's not in print with Shout Factory anymore, but it was available on Blu-ray at least up until a couple of years ago. So it is cool that his version is available, and his version at 2 hours. It sounds like it's a little too long and not particularly well paced, even at 1:48. But at 2 hours, there are a couple more elements added in there that might make you forgive that a little bit more. And yeah, I do for the most part enjoy. It's not as overqualified of a cast. Like, it is not Clancy Brown, it is not Fred Ward or Julianne Moore. Scott Bakula, Kevin J. O'Connor, Femke Janssen are not quite these caliber of actors, but I do think that they are, committed to the Barker vision and the Barker weirdness. And if you like that and that appeals to you, and you like Hellraiser and Nightbreed, who else is going to give you a noir that contains the kind of imaginatively disgusting imagery that appears in this? And he did find talented enough people to help him pull some of those images off. So yeah, it's not Angel Heart, unfortunately, but it is Barker trying to do it and getting, as close as someone could for a guy who only ever made 3 movies and should have honestly had more chances to make more movies.
We can appreciate an interesting.
I would have loved to see him get better and better. Yeah.
yeah. And it does get to some really genuinely, in terms of the imagery, like disturbing and upsetting places in the finale. And there's very few American studio filmmakers who would be willing to cite Fulci as someone who was inspiring some of the things that they were doing at the, having a finale like this in their noir movie. So, solid 3 still for me.
Yeah, I'm pretty much right there with you. He does have a tough job trying to speak the cinematic language of noir that's been established for, at this point in the 90s, like 70 years. So I don't think he quite captures that. But he is still very good at horror and obviously better at horror. And when those elements do come up, and he does get the chance to mix those things with noir, I think he does a really good job. It's just this is a little bit drawn out for what he has to balance when it comes to the noir elements, because I just don't think he doesn't have that kind of juice when it comes to being a director. But anytime anytime a face is melting, or there's some type of blood geyser, or there's a ritual sacrifice, I mean, Clive Barker nails it. Absolutely nails it. So it's kind of interesting to watch him juggle those two things throughout the whole film. And I do like, I don't love anybody in particular in this, but I do still think that I kind of like the way that Kevin J. O'Connor plays Swan very sad. You'd almost be thinking that he'd play him a little bit more egotistical given his position in the entertainment industry in this movie and all of that, but and the fact that he's the one magician that seems to actually have any powers or use them, but he does kind of play him as pretty sad. It's not incredibly nuanced or anything. I think I just happen to like O'Connor for some reason, probably because I grew up with The Mummy. But yeah, good finale for the most part. I do think getting rid of the antagonist the way they do, just with that levitating tackle, is a little silly, but I do like that they
once again, does Daniel von Bargen just go too hard that feels disappointing?
Yes. Yeah. I think that's it. Yeah.
I think that is it. Yeah. Because I again, the antagonist in this, prologue wise, he feels threatening and interesting and kind of silly, yes, but kind of cool, just in the context of this movie. And he's really good in the finale. It's just that there's so much build up to him. I do think that his 2 main disciples, the guy that uses the scalpel and the sharp teeth guy, are interesting, and I do like their fits. Like we said, gold pants all the way. That's pretty badass. And their deaths are honestly pretty cool. Like the one guy gets impaled by the hourglass stage production set thing that they use at the beginning, and
the giant tongued dragon or whatever just goes right through his chest.
And it's sweet too, because then the sand from the hourglass starts to pour out, so it looks like it's pouring out of his back, and it's kind of sick. And then there's the other dude gets almost like a face melt death where boils come out of his half of his face, and then they start pussing out blood. It's pretty gross, to be honest. So yeah, there's a lot of elements here that have the Barker quality. I just don't know if he completely nails the noir aspect of it, but it's something to behold. I'll say that. So yeah, I'd give it a 3. Yeah.
I mean, we're pretty across the board on both of these. These are fun romps, but they're nothing you're going to write home about. Maybe you revisit them every once in a while when you need a laugh or you want to see some cool effects. But just kind of interesting experiments. I would definitely put it at a 3.5 or a 3 out of 5. In terms of, again, I feel like I've said everything I really needed to, but the last one I do want to point out is just another needless pointing out of a character actor is that Borat's fat friend is an extra in this, but highlighted twice. He's the guy that gets out of at the Swan gig when he's getting out of the limousine. He's like the big guy with the cigar. I was like, oh yeah, cool. That's who he's running around butt ass naked with in the hotel. Yeah.
Okay.
In case you didn't know, which I'm so glad you do know.
So I will also give this a 3. And there are a couple things I love, which was I love a cold open and a wild shift in tone. I thought that was cool. Always gets me interested. But I think ultimately, Clive Barker was is more interested in the weirdos and the perverts, and he could and that kind of shows, because that's probably the most interesting part. But I will for the rest of my days think about where Scott Bakula got that back tattoo. So I'll give it, I'll give it that.
The mystery remains even on the director's cut. Damn, Barker.
Yeah,
come on.
Maybe the version of this where the weirdos and the perverts are the protagonists, and they're like, "Who is this generic cop who keeps trying to like ruin our vibe?"
No, that's a
good just want to be Travolta. That's just getting in our business.
That's just Nightbreed, to be honest, because that's where they fuck all the cops up in the cemetery at the end. But yeah, I think that's going to wrap it up for Lord of Illusions and for this week's episode. Once again, that was Cast a Deadly Spell from 1991 and Lord of Illusions from 1995. Thanks so much, Phil and Walker, for joining us on this episode and for bringing these films with you. Once again, before you guys head out, this is usually where we have you plug something. So what is, where can people find the theater? Give them the logistics. When's the date? I know you guys are still maybe working that out.
So we're aiming for early December, and it's at 151 Kent Street in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island. Walker, do you want to give the socials?
Yeah,
and
so
all that
across the
fun
board
stuff?
and everything, it's just at the Tivoli Cinema, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that stuff. Yeah, we're super excited. We've got pretty much all of December programmed, blocked out. We've signed all of our contracts with all the distributors we need to do just rep out the butthole. And yeah, please come on down if you are on the East Coast. If you want to see some cool movies, get to a cool atmosphere, we would love to have you. I would love to not have the first business I run go into the ground, into the dirt, and lose everyone a bunch of money. So please come on down.
There's a lot at stake for Walker in this.
Please help me, please.
Come out and do him a favor and support him. And, but seriously, I wouldn't be doing this without Walker, and he's an amazing guy, and we're super excited.
We can't wait. And if you're listening to this, and if you're a director or a filmmaker, or you're a producer and you're looking for where you can send your movie for some test screenings, or even just like on a short independent run, that's what we're looking for too. So bang our line. That's going to be on all the socials on the websites. Programming at tivolicinema.com. We'd love to talk to you. All right.
Hell yeah. If you guys ever do the Of Unknown Origin Mouse Hunt double feature,
110% I will be doing that. I thought that was fucking genius. That's the same movie, but one of them is like so horrifying and gut wrenching, and the other one is like Adam Rifkin being like, "Oh, that mouse!" When I saw you guys did that, I thought that was perfect.
That was a fun app.
Hell yeah! So. But yeah, definitely everyone should be going and checking it out if you can, and going and even if you're not local, go support them. Go give them give them a shout on social media. Go follow them. Right. For our listeners, you can find us 1 week from now over on the Patreon feed, exclusively over there, where we are going to be doing your guys' patron voted episode, because once again, it is that time of year. And we had an episode where we asked you guys to only pick noir and neo-noir and crime film adjacent films for us to talk about. And you guys did not disappoint by once again having us talk about two of our all-time favorite filmmakers. We are going to be talking about Lost Highway by David Lynch, which is one that, speaking of keeping us in the crime horror realm like we did this week, that is definitely a contender.
Yeah.
And you guys paired it with Brian De Palma's Femme Fatale, which is one of my last most favorite Brian De Palma films that he ever made, and Jamie has never seen in his mind. I think is going to be melted by the content of what that movie is.
I can't wait. I mean, a later De Palma and you five it. That sounds magical. Yep. Can't wait.
It is an absolutely absurd movie, and no way of even describing it. So that's going to be one crazy episode. And also, because we're doing your patron voted episode, that also means that we are going to be putting up the new poll. Usually the new poll goes up around the same week that episode drops. So start getting your double features ready, because we are actually letting you guys vote on our first episode of 2025.
Oh, yeah.
That is going to be what the next patron vote is going to be for. So kick in a brand new year with a crazy double feature. Come up with it. Start thinking about it, because you guys are going to be submitting those polls over or votes over on the Patreon in just 1 week's time. So that's what you guys can expect over on the Patreon. And then in 2 weeks' time, we actually still don't know what that episode is going to be quite yet, but we are in Noirvember.
Yes. So we'll be that.
So it is going to be a noir
detective of some kind.
So there's a realm that you can imagine that episode is going to be in. We have a guest who's still trying to figure out exactly what it is that they want to cover, but we are going to be definitely talking about some more noir and some more noir for the rest of the month. There's actually 5 episodes in the month of Noirvember this year, so it's a little bit more than we usually do. Usually we get 5 spooky episodes just because of the way the Saturdays and the calendar works, but we have officially moved on to having 5 episodes in Noirvember, so we are going to get a little bit of extra time in this environment. But yeah, that's what you can look forward to over on the main feed. More noir talks coming your way. But yeah, that wraps it up for everything this week. Thanks so much for listening, and keep it sleazy.
Keep it sleazy, everybody.